Well, hello everybody. How are you doing today? Or rather tonight. On this fine, fine evening. We're gonna be finishing up Frambo today, I think. Let me just get everything booted up here. I had some things I had to do real quick. And I forgot to open Steam. I am not the smartest sometimes. Let me just wait for that to boot up. Just give me a moment. I apologize. Oh, I accidentally launched Among Us. That's not what I meant to do. I need the thing to open. Properly, preferably. No! No! I don't want it to launch. No, stop. I don't want to play the Among Us. No! Escape. That's not what I wanted. Apparently I'm a little bit more out of sorts tonight than I would think. Yes, we are listening to lullabies because it's a quiet night. It is late in the hours. There we go. Oh no, let's see if I remember how to shift my screen. Oh no, did it crash? No, it didn't. Let's see if I can remember. Is it? It's breaking. Because of course it is. Hopefully it fixes itself. I may have to Google how to shift it onto my primary monitor again, because sometimes it likes to shift. Shift game to other monitor. I know how, I just can't remember. Alt Windows. Aha! Alt Windows. Why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? Oh no. Alt Windows key. I could do that too. Hold on. I'm being very dumb. Am I just dumb? I might just be dumb. Another model, use keyboard shortcut Alt Windows key, left right arrow key. That's what I'm using. I don't know what on earth is happening. Huh. We're gonna do... I'm just gonna do it this way. Wants to be a pain. I'll do it the good old-fashioned way. Hope I don't break the game in the process. It's gonna be one of these nights. Hopefully that's a little bit better for you guys. We're just gonna continue where we left off. We had just escaped the... Yes, we had just escaped sisters. Oh dear, this bridge looks pretty scary. Oh, friend, come on. We have to go home. There's no time to be afraid now. Yes, but I'm a bit afraid of heights. I can go first, alright? Then you follow me. Alright, kitty. You're so sweet. I'll be right behind you. Look at him skitter. Fran? Wait. Oh my dear, I can't hold on anymore. I don't want to die. Hi Poppy, how are you? You just missed the poll of what I'm doing tonight, so I opted for Franbo. Also, sorry I sound far away. I had to move my mic because I have my dinner in front of me because I haven't eaten yet and it's almost 1:30 a.m. How's that? Is that better? I'm also trying to be quiet so I don't wake people up. I could redo the poll if you would like. I mean, you're the only person to show up. No one else voted, and I was like, well, 2 of these games involve participation, so I'll just go with the third option, which is just finishing Franbo. You won't die, my friend. Come on, you can do it. Jump. Alright, here I go. I got you. Fran! No! One of them was I read a book, specifically one of my favorite books from when I was a kid, a book that actually inspired me greatly when I was a kid. And the other was doing some more of the You Choose Baldur's Gate playthrough, since it's been a little bit. Down Mr. Midnight goes. There was a third option, which was just other, in case anyone else had any other ideas. Don't be afraid, Fran. We always fall. And after the pain, we will always rise. Oh dear, Aunt Grace, don't ever leave me. Don't cry, my little girl. Your heart is pure, but your mind is tormented. You have to stay and walk your own path. Please, Aunt Grace, why won't you take me out of here? Please. You're going to leave me all alone, like my mother and father did. I'm sorry, my dear Fran. You will understand soon. How about if I'm right about here? Is that better? I can, hold on. I'll put my mic here. I also don't want to munch too loudly into my mic, because I don't want to cause anybody... Yeah, that's because I've set up everything to have my mic directly in front of my face now, which is something I never used to do. I used to have it sitting closer to my monitor, because I was always like, but I need... No, it's fine. Like I said, it's just rice. It's sesame chicken. Oh? What happened? Where am I? Fran? Where are you? But yeah. I don't know if you heard the options or if I was still quiet. Yes. It is, in fact, that book. What are Fran's shoes? Fran's shoe. These are Fran's stockings. Ah, what an ugly tree. I will scratch you, evil thing. Kitty? Kitty, stop it. What are you talking about? Fran? My darling, is that you? It can't be. What is it, my dear? Of course it's me. Who else would I be? Fran, you are a tree! It's called Margret and the Moth Tree. And it was actually the book I was going to read if that was the option that was chosen. Don't be silly. Help me get up. I joined the book reading club when I was a kid, and it was one of the books on the list, and I loved it so much I actually went out and bought my own copy of it. It's such a good book. Maybe. We'll get through some Franbo first, at least, and then we'll see if anyone else shows up. But hey, if you'd... I figure since it's late at night, it'd be, like, nice. I'd just, like, read a good story, and maybe I'd make it, like, not a nightly thing, but, like, maybe once a month, I would just, like, read a book, have a story time. Lord knows I have a bajillion books, and it'd be good for me to get back into reading. Wait just a second. Where are my hands? Why can't I move? I'm telling you, my dear, you've turned into a tree. What? But how? Oh, my dear, this is the end of the line. The big monster did this. I know it, Kitty. He won't let us go home. I hope he doesn't come back. He was very scary. He always comes back. Is he William Afton? I think I remember him from that night. The night Mom and Dad died. I did! I had a cooking stream. And then immediately I slept in through another one of my streams and then was completely and utterly sick yesterday. So it's been a rough week. Kitty, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to go home. But you are a tree, my friend. A tree! I can't carry you all the way back home. Besides, I'm not sure where we are, either. Am I going to die, Kitty? I caught a stomach bug. It's been going around recently. Somehow, someway, I managed to catch it, so I spent all of yesterday dying on the couch. I was gonna do a makeup stream since I ended up sleeping in through Tuesday's stream. Somehow I didn't hear any of my alarms go off and I slept in until 1, and then basically immediately had to go to work. Yeah, me too. It was a very brutal day. And it was a lot of me trying to convince my, a lot of me trying to convince my dad to watch Hazbin Hotel with me. When all he wanted to do was watch Supernatural. And I was like, please, Dad, watch Hazbin Hotel with me. I'm dying. And he's like, no. I want to watch Supernatural. So I just napped. Which is typically how it goes. Am I going to die, Kitty? Tell me. Please don't say that, Fran. Don't leave me. But I feel so weak. Omga! Igni mi hala! Oh fuck. More of... Oh god. Sometimes I look at words and go, oh no, I've started, and now how am I gonna do this? Kluk ig rumena. Pasgu halani. I wonder if this is a completely made up language or if it's an actual language. I'm pretty sure it's just a made up language. Igni jokul. Vanti. I can't speak words. Ah, be careful, sir. Why are you attacking me? Could you please tell me where I am, sir? Hala, Kluk. Hala. Stop it. I'll scratch you. Hala, rumana igni. Well, yeah, considering they say like 3 words, I'm gonna go with... That's it. What are they saying? Oh, my kitty, why is this happening to us? Hala. Stop attacking me, please. I mean no harm. Hala ig, ni vanti. Kitty, help me. Find my purse, please. Maybe I can do something about this. I'll see what I can do, Fran. There it is. I see my friend's purse. take the stone. It's shiny. I like how he just holds it in his mouth. There we go. Yes, I have a chibi model. I do. I have a 2D chibi model that I have set as a redeem. Thank you. I got myself all dressed up, all nice. Right. It can't be done. So, don't mind me while I... Fran, my darling, I got the purse. It's amazing. You're the best, Mr. Midnight. Now show this gentleman who is attacking me my family picture. Maybe he understands what a human is. Well, I really hope he does. Onam? Ni... Oh, fuck, I can't remember how I pronounced it. Oh, fuck words. Haka? Ah, Ramuna, Paskin Ultao. Huh? Where are you taking me, Sir Vegetable? They want to help you, Fran. I can feel it. Uka Ramuna, Ipo. Don't be afraid, my friend. Kitty, stop them, please. Don't leave me. I'll be right here with you. Galpoma, Galpoma. And off they go. Yes, I got myself all dressed up. I think I even put my contacts in. So normally I wear glasses, because I'm blind. I can't see nothing. Itmen bal menokastbe. Ziar. Ni aluma. Anuman. Fuck that one up. Ishmao iptem koshka. Imitan ufrol. Gorska zar-o. Welcome, creature. My name is Zar. Do you speak human? Oh my goodness, yes! Finally, words I understand! I like how they planted her. My good friend Ride told me that you showed him an illustration with 4 humans and a cat. I assume you are one of them, the little girl. Please forgive my good friend if he scared you. We have never seen a human looking like a tree before. Let me explain. Oh, no need to speak, my child. The seed will show me everything. Iptem monkast itko. Itko bro. Ikto prot. Let me see. You are good, no doubt about that. A seeker of the truth. Very common of the Bow family tree. Ah, your name is Fran. You're the girl with the passion for life. I see great love towards this little creature standing next to you. A cat, protector of gates. Interesting. You can see all of that? Be quiet. I see something else. The seed doesn't hide anything. I see a world nobody should see. Nobody except for one. What do you mean by except for one? You mean the monster? You're not supposed to be here, Fran. This is the only thing I can tell you, my child. I understand, but can you help me then? We can't let you leave now. It is too dangerous for us. You should never have been aware of our existence. There must be a way. Am I dead or something? Dead? What do you mean by that? You know, when you no longer exist. Besides, it's not normal to be a tree. I must be dead. Death is nothing more than the absence of love. Once you can't feel love, you die, even if your body still walks. I still feel love for my kitty. I can't be dead. Please help me. Little cat, come closer. Let me see you. What is your name? My name is Mr. Midnight. That is indeed a very pretty name. Do you think Fran should go back home? Yes, I do, sir. Show us the way back home, I implore you. Ah, I have a question. Are you the king? Haha, you are hilarious. Yes, I am the king of Ithursta. Oh, what an honor, your highness. By the way, I like your leaves. They are very pretty. King, sir, please, will you help me? Why is this need to go home so great? The seed told me your story. You don't have much to go back to. There are many reasons, sir. But yes, how have you been, Poppy? It has been a hot minute. But the most important is my aunt. She will protect me. I want to feel like somebody cares about me. I'm confused almost all the time, and I want some place where I can feel at home, sir. I see. You are very brave. I just want to go home. Please help me. There are things I cannot do, but I will help you. I will lead you to the door that will take you home, but it's up to you to walk through it. Really? Oh, thank you so much. And where is this door, sir? We'll talk about that later. First things first, you must be able to talk and walk on this land. Yes, sir, that would be really great. I'm afraid I won't be able to bring your human body back. Only the Great Wizard can do that. But we'll talk more about him after the procedure. You must first understand our language. But how will I ever understand your language? Eat this fruit. Your ears and tongue will be able to understand, but not your eyes. That means you won't be able to read. Don't worry about that, I can always ask. Excuse me, do you understand what I'm saying, human lady? Yes, I do, and you sound so kind. This is incredible. Do you understand, my kitty? I didn't, your highness. I demand one fruit for myself. You don't need the fruit, Mr. Midnight. Our land is based on fragrances and sound. You'll see everything as your own world very soon, no doubt about it. You'll do fine, kitty. And, sir, do you know why I became a tree? Yes, but I don't think I'm the right one to give you the answers. Now, it's time for the procedure. Are you afraid of heights? A little, yes. I get dizzy. Why? Take her upstairs, immediately. Where are you taking me? What are you gonna do to me? Oh, fucking bug. To get some arms and legs. Everything will be fine. I'll be waiting for you, Fran. I love you. I would not want that to touch me. I would just roll away very quickly. Good day. My name is Palantras, and I'm your doctor today, humbly at your service. Are you the emergency case? Wow, amazing. What a huge, beautiful, fluffy thing. Excuse me? Oh, I'm sorry. It's just that I've never seen anything like you before. I'm still trying to understand that all of this is real. My name is Fran. I'm a human girl. The king sent me here to get some arms and legs so I can go home. Oh, a human. I think we can get you a pair of arms and legs, but we'll have to travel a little bit further in order to fix that. Are you ready to enter the paws of the beast? What beast? Me. I'm the beast. Let's go. He just grabs her and scoops her away. Here we are. Wow, this place is so beautiful and peaceful. I wish I could stay here forever. Thank you. This is my home. This is where I was born. The spirit of the great Velokas created it. It has the purest water in the whole universe. Oh wow, that sounds amazing. Who is the great Velokas? Haven't you heard about the 5 realities? He's the king of the first reality. So what have you been up to, Poppy? Anything new and exciting? A long time ago, he was at war with the darkness, and one day he fell. He fell so badly, his heart was broken, and he was all alone. But he came to a thirsta, and his blood made this pink water. That's why it's so pure. It's a very long story. Wow, that sounds grand. I mean, I didn't know about other realities. And how is it that you're here? What brought you to a thirsta? My kitty and I were on our way back home. I was so happy to see him and hug him again, but then we fell. And the big monster that follows me did this. He broke the bridge. He wants me dead. Who would want to see you dead? That sounds terrible. I prefer not to talk about this. But, Sir Doctor, do you know why I became a tree? Yes. Sometimes our wishes are so strong that they become true. You did this in order to keep yourself alive. Think about it this way. Your human body was destroyed, but you wanted to keep being Fran. You wanted to keep your life. So you took on this empty shell to maintain all your precious memories. This is actually the first time I've seen a human using a tree as a chrysalis. But it's dangerous to have you here. It makes our land vulnerable. I did this to myself? Wow. But... Paleontist, sir. How? I didn't know I was doing anything. You really didn't know what you were doing? I see. Well... When you traveled to a thirsta, you opened a door between your reality and ours. And with this door open, unexpected creatures can also enter our reality. And if that happens, the balance will be tainted. And there is only one who wishes to poison the second reality. The monster. The terrible black. I can't see this happening again. I just can't. Don't be sad, Doctor. I'm very sorry for what I did. I didn't mean to. Oh, little girl, you're so nice. You don't have anything to be sorry for. I think you're very special, but let's concentrate on your arms and legs, alright? Yes, Doctor. Soldier of the sun, spirit of the water, give Fran her arms and legs. How do you feel, Fran from a thirsta? Wow, I feel like a beautiful tree. I have leaves. I'm glad you like it. I told you we would fix it. This water is magical. It can fix anything. Anything? Do you think it could fix my mommy and daddy? What do you mean, fix them? What's wrong with them? Nothing, Doctor. Thank you very much for helping me. You're the best doctor I've ever had, and you're fluffy and beautiful. I had another doctor before. His name was Dr. Dern, but he was an evil old man. Old man, I bet he wasn't that bad. Maybe he was just following the rules. Let's go now. I'll leave you at the station. We have arms and legs, and I'm gonna eat another bite of dinner, so I've been boxed. Here we are again. Shozar the King, what a nice and thirsted ease you've become. Thank you again, Doctor. You'll have to meet my kitty someday. That would be lovely. I'll see you soon. Goodbye. But yeah, what have you been up to, Poppy? You fluffy kitty. Ah, do you like that? Haha. Here I am. Fran, my dear, you've got leaves on your head. How pretty. Oh, let me see you. What a great Thurstonese you've become. Thank you, King, sir. The doctor was incredible. He made magic with water. But he was sad. He told me many things, but I didn't quite understand. Don't worry. Paleontist will be fine. I know the reasons. We've had some problems to solve, but that's nothing you should worry about. Let's talk about how you can get back home, right? Yes, please. You said something about a great wizard? Yes, the great wizard is the only one who can bring your human body back. And he has the stones to open the door that'll lead you home. Where is the wizard? What stones? This land is full of things I don't understand. Haha, you haven't even been outside this castle and you already want to know everything? That's the passion I was talking about. Have patience, Fran. The great wizard lives upon the great Mount Kotram. But we haven't seen him for a while now. Find him and everything will be just fine. Why haven't you tried to find the great wizard yourself? Well, we don't need to. It's very logical. You see, we don't need a wizard to perform magic or prepare potions. We can do that ourselves. The wizard's most important task is to protect the stones that open the door. I see. So the stones are like keys. And where is this mountain you mentioned? You'll have to ask around. Follow the signs. I have to go now, but I'll be back in time to help you with the door. Have a great Athirsta day, and good luck finding the Great Wizard. Wow, did you see that huge fluffy creature, Kitty? That's Pelantras. He fixed me. Yes, that is exactly the vibe that this is going for. Yes, it's certainly very fluffy. Oh, I forgot. Here's your purse. Oh, thank you, Kitty. Did you see my pills anywhere? I don't think so. Maybe they're on the other side of the lake, next to your clothes. Well, we have other things to do anyways. We have to find the wizard. Yes, the king said something about a mountain, too. Waze, hello! How are you? I was wondering when you would come on. I'm playing some more Fran Bow. I did do a poll to see what people would like, but nobody was here yet. So I ended up deciding on the only one that didn't require others. Yes. Yes, the king said something about a mountain, too. Yes, Mount Kotram. The Great Wizard lives there. Let's go. Alright. Oh, fair enough. No, you can't get in. It's closed. What's beyond this passage? Sorry, I just wanted to see what's in this passage. Well, the library, of course, but it's closed. Come back in the fall or winter, then it'll be open. Hey, aren't you a talking tree I took to see Pelantras? Yes, that's me. Pelantras gave me arms and legs. Yes, and also a head. That's very positive. Hehe, yes. But why is the library closed, sir? Well, that's logical. As the sun goes around the second moon of Athirsta, we open. Only then will real knowledge be learned. And that only happens in fall or winter. Oh. So you don't learn anything while it's summer or spring? Of course we learn. We're learning all the time. I'm learning now that you like to ask many questions. Well, I'm curious, that's why. Everything looks so different here in Athirsta. I guess you're not from around here. Well, I hope to see you soon. Yes, thank you, sir. Bye. But yeah. I decided to go with this one, and I figured I'd wait to do another poll after a little bit just to see if anyone showed up. Hello, sir. Are you a guard? Yes. Oh, I see. Do you know where Mount Contram is? Yes. Can you tell me where it is? Yes. Well, tell me, please. Mount Contram is only in wintertime. Wintertime? What are you talking about? Of course, wintertime. What do you think? But I can't wait for wintertime. Oh, you don't wait for it. You go there. Go? Oh, but how? Sorry, I'm no good at explaining things. Go down the stairs, then straight. You'll find a clockmaker. He can explain things, I think. He tried with me before. Alright, thank you, sir. The guard's doing his best. Rock. We're gonna go this way. Right. Hello. Ah, who's there? Who? Me, Fran. Can't you see me? Oh, now I see. A little. You have 4 eyes. Wow. 4 eyes? I don't have... what are you selling? Only the very best plovas of the entire land. Do you smell it? Sure, they look like coconuts. It's poo, miss. Poo that I collect. They're not coconuts. Poo? Like in the toilet? Wow, I thought it was really bad to eat poo. Bad? Why? It's very yummy. We love it here. It makes everything grow and shine. Hehe, I'll have to get going now. Good luck with the plovas. Bye. He's a stink bug. Hello, what are you doing? Working on my clock. Oh, I see. Sir, do you know where I can find the Great Wizard? No, miss, I make clocks. I fix clocks. I listen to clocks. Tick-tock. And do you know where Mount Contrum is? Mount Contrum only exists in the wintertime, otherwise it's just a regular mountain. I can't wait for winter. The king said that the wizard would be on Mount Contrum. You don't need to wait for winter to come. That's absurd. Time is an infinitely layered reality. Oh, a layered reality? That sounds great. What should I do then? Go to the big clock and change the season. Just change it. Where's the clock? Well, go towards the castle, but turn left when you see the stairs. You'll find a big clock in the tree. Good luck. Thank you, sir. You're very nice. Bye. So the clock is this way. It is a very odd clock. Where are the numbers? It has symbols and colors, but doesn't seem to show the time. Well, I guess time works differently here in Athursta. Oh, it sounds like something's broke. But how does it work? Well, let's go back to the clockmaker, because the clock is broken. Sir, I have a little problem. Yes, I don't have any. The big clock on the tree, it's broken. I can't make it work. Please help me. A broken clock. What a disgrace. Poor clock. You have to help me. Please fix it for me. I beg you. I have to go home. I never fix a clock for nothing, otherwise my life's time goes to waste. What do you mean? I charge 1 big gold coin per clock. Time is gold, you know. I don't have any coins. Then no clock will ever be fixed. How do I get a coin? Look, there's a snail who loves to give gold away. Talk to him. I understand. Thank you. I'll see if I can get some gold for you. Bye. Hello. Good day, young one. What are you doing? The war is about to start, but I can't see any meaning in the meaningless. What do you mean? Join me, young one. You'll be rewarded with 1 gold coin if you come back alive. Join you? Join you where? The game is about to begin. You are the Kamalas, I am the Velakas. Black and white, as shadows and light. Is this a sort of board game, sir? Yes, a board game. Let's immerse ourselves in this adventure. You against me. I'll give you a coin if you win, eh? What do you say? What are the rules? First to place 3 of the same figures in a diagonal, horizontal, or vertical line wins. We toss the machinery and see who begins. Are you in? Tic-tac-toe? Sure, it sounds like a game we used to play in school called tic-tac-toe. But why would I just give me a gold if I win? Time is gold and I'm very old. I've been around for a long time. I just want to have a good time. I see. Well, let's play. We're gonna play some good old tic-tac-toe. Aha! Aha, and I ended up with a draw that time. Oh, it's his go first. It's gonna end up as another draw. Well, that was awful rude of him. Okay, I actually won that time. It's like, I'm real bad at tic-tac-toe. Alright. Oh, that was very clever. Good for you. Yes, I'm good at this. Thank you for the coin, sir. It's very shiny. Bye. Alright, I got this guy a coin. Sir, I have a little problem. Yes, I don't have any. Clock is broken. Poor clock. I do have something to give now. Here, a gold coin. Oh yes, but you have to offer me the job first, alright? Do it and be polite. Oh, Sir Clockmaker, would you like to fix my clock? In exchange for this piece of gold and in the name of, time? I beg of you, accept my offer. Of course, that was an incredible job offer. Very passionate. Great, let's go to the big clock and fix it. You were right. The clock is broken. You can fix it, right? Of course. Just a second. But how are you doing, Waze? Yes. Oh, there. What is it? It seems somebody was playing a dirty game around this clock. What do you mean? I mean somebody broke it. It's immortal. It's immoral breaking a defenseless clock. Ugh. Why would somebody break it? Gummeltas, Winter, Mount Coram, the stones, many reasons, miss. Oh, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Just vibing? Chillin'? Absolutely fair, absolutely fair. I'm eating my dinner while I stream, so I have to apologize if I go quiet for a couple minutes. As I aggressively munch my dinner. I have to mute my mic. Kamalis, the evil darkness. They work for Ramor, the evil black, or the terrible black. And Kamalis are the only ones allowed into this land. The only evil we have around here. It wouldn't surprise me. Ramor wants the stones. But what I don't understand is, for what purpose? Those stones are meaningless to him and his kingdom. And the stones are in wintertime. Is Ramor a giant black monster with a goat mask? A dead goat mask? Yes, you know him? Yes, I think it's because of him that I'm in this land. I'm a human, you know. Oh, a human! Now I understand. I also need the stones. They're my way back home. I hope it's not too late. Aha! That is why you need to go to wintertime and to Mount Kotram. Yes, exactly. I have to go talk with the Great Wizard and borrow his stones. Well, it's fixed now. I'll give you something that'll make it easy for you. Here. It's a remote control for the clock. You'll be able to travel into all 4 seasons with just a quick turn. But it's just a prototype, so it may not work if you're too far away. And remember, time is an infinite layered reality, so be careful. I'll be careful. Thank you very much. You're a very nice clockmaker guy. Please, call me Cogwind. Alright, Mr. Cogwind. I'm Fran, by the way. See you soon. Bye. Look at him go. We're just gonna borrow this. Oh, look at Mr. Midnight. Oh wow, this island is very tiny. Oh, Fran, this is where we were before. I fixed the bridge to get to your purse. Wow, Kitty, you're very clever. I hope we find my things. Kitty, I can't find my pills. Maybe the pills aren't here. Maybe you lost them. Well, they weren't doing me any good anyways. Maybe they'll reappear someday. Let's keep going for now. Yes, I found you, dear clothes. Come to your one and only wearer. Sometimes things just don't work. Why can't I use Fran's clothes on Fran? Alright. Mr. Midnight looks so worried about being in the boat. Alright. I recognize this kind of tree. My Aunt Grace had one at home. I want to talk to him. It's a lemon tree. They're very delicate. Good day, little lady. Could you show me your ticket, please? Hello, sir, I don't have a ticket. How do I get one? What? All of Athirsta's citizens have a ticket. Why don't you have yours? Oh, I'm not a citizen, sir. Maybe that's why. Not a citizen? That's a new one. Too new for me, though. Sorry, little lady, I can't let you in. Alright, sir, I understand, but what can I do then? I would really like to go inside. I don't know. This has never happened before. I guess I'll have to find my own way inside. Thank you. Bye. He just stands posted up, ready to go. Bum, 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 ba-da, bum, ba-da-da. Oh, are you the great wizard, sir? Sorry, sir. I'm Fran and I need your help. Is this Mount Cottram? Sorry, should I go, sir? You have many questions. That's good. Oh, sorry, sir. The king said you could help me. What the king says, we do. I need you to lend me the stones to open a door to my world. The stones are missing and I don't remember where they are. Every time they seek, I hide. Every time I hide, I forget, so they can't be found. Oh, I see. But maybe I can help you find them. You want to know the biggest answer of them all. How does the rabbit do it? I once saw it. I saw it once. A human did it. The rabbit came from an empty hat. How? This is the greatest question of them all. Because if nothing exists, then nothing exists. I ask again, how? Sir, why don't you ask the person who did it? Oh, I have a visitor. Good day. What brings you to the Great Wizard? That means me, just so you know. Good day, sir. The king sent me here for the stones. The stones? It's been a long time since somebody came asking for them. I made the most fantastic spell of all time so nobody could find them. You know, the Black Shadows, the Kamalas, they tried to steal them all the time. So I have to be sure. The king told me that the stones would open a door to go home. The stones are hiding. I only remember the 4 riddles that are connected to the stones. 4 riddles that will unlock my memory. Only when all 4 riddles are answered correctly will I be able to tell you where to find 5 items. These items are the stones in their layered reality. Then, the only one who can bring them back is me. Oh, that was a lot of information, sir. Let me show you. Oh, he's actually trying to figure out how to do the, trick. This is the Star of Athirsta. Kable. The greatest guide of the sky. The greatest caretaker of this land. Oh, wow, that sounds great. I'll give you the 4 riddles written down in the language of everything. The answer is always 1 item. Place the items on the Star of Athirsta on their respective symbol. After that, I'll be able to tell you where the stones are. Be burning hard. I'm shouting as the sun will never burn you. Perhaps a sour smell. I'll get you. Flow, flow, cold-blooded sun. Let your body dance through the rising stream. Light and hollow, I'm the freedom of birds and the pen of man. Feather, lemon, coal. Ice? Oh, thank you very much, Sir Wizard. Oh, Sir Wizard, the king told me you can make me human again. Did he? I think that's true. I barely remember how to, though. You don't remember? But I can't go home as a tree. I understand, but I can't help you right now. I have to recover some of my knowledge. Perhaps we can make you a human after you find the first stone. Oh, that would be incredible. Yes, incredible and great. Just try to figure out the riddles and I'll guess everything will be fine. Sir, do I need something special to become human? I think the smell is very important, if I remember correctly. So bring me your clothes and we'll see how it goes. Alright, sir. I'll bring you my clothes later. Bye. Alright. We got the riddles. Oh, that paper swirl is huge. Can I go up here? Oh, Kitty, did you see that? Did you? Yes, my dear, I saw it. What was it? Huh, I think it's the shadows. Oh dear, I don't want to see them again. Again? Yes, Kitty, they were all over the place in the hospital. I want to go home. We'll go home soon, my dear. Kitty, can you make me a promise that whatever happens, you and I will always be on the same side? Of course, my dear, I promise. Onyx, why can't you promise me that? He's not even looking at me. Like a jerk. He's laying on my bed. Nah. Onyx isn't as nice as Mr. Midnight. He's more temperamental. Great. Now we have to keep going. This mountaintop is very high because it's the top. Yeah, but like, I'm cold as I am, but if you use me, I'll be burning hard. I'm shiny as the sun, but I'll never burn you. Perhaps a sour smile I'll get you. That one's obviously a lemon. Flow, flow, cold-blooded sun. Let your body dance through the rising stream, which I can only imagine is ice. Light and hollow, I'm the freedom of birds and the pen of man. Is a quill. What is a quill made out of? A feather. Are they confusing? Feather. This basket seems to be in good shape. That's good. Hello. Good day, living creature. All good. Yes, I'm fine. What are you doing? I'm smelling this flower. Beautiful creation. Waiting for someone? Honestly, I think most of my knowledge from those riddles is coming from the fact that I watched Markiplier's playthrough of this game ages and ages and ages ago. So my brain is just recollecting that knowledge. Normally I'm real bad at riddles too. I'm waiting for the lemons to grow. Do you like lemons? They're a bit sour for my taste, but lemonade is yummy. Lemonade is what I'll do with the lemons. For the customers at the bar, you know? We put some other stuff inside too, so we can fly. Fly? Wow, I'd love to try that. It sounds great. Yeah, that's why I wait. You can't rush it. Hey, the bar opens in the fall, and a very awesome dancer will perform. You should come and hang out. Maybe I will. It sounds fun. Thank you. Bye. Sir, can I have one of your lemons? I'm sorry, lovely. Lemon resources are quite limited. I can't let you take them. I take all the lemons the basket can carry. That means every lemon on the tree. Sag. I need to poke a hole in the... Pilantris? Sir? Wait, don't go! Oh no, he looked really bad, Kitty. Wasn't that the doctor? Maybe he can cure himself. I hope so, Kitty. He was so hurt he lost his feather. I wonder what happened. Well, that's one of the things. Oh, this is Pilantris' feather. I hope he gets better soon. Not poor Pilantris. Oh, hello, Peach! I think that's what... Yeah, Peach. Thank you for the follow! Welcome, welcome. Good day, sir. Good day, little creature. I've seen flying boats, sir. How do they work? Think about them floating on the water, but instead of water, it's air. It's so simple. And can I borrow one of your boats to fly away? I want to go home. Oh, go home? I see. Sadly, these boats only work with Etherstonese. Huh, I see. Well, thank you, sir. Have fun making your boat. How are you doing? Welcome, welcome. We're just vibing. We're having a good time. How are you? Hello, little Root. You're so cute. Oh, thank you. You're cute, too. Hehe, I'm Fran. And you are? Me? No, I'm not Fran. I'm Zelma, and I want to sing all day long. Hehe, what's your favorite song? My favorite song goes like this. 1 and 1 are 2, 1 and 2 are 3, 2 and 3 are 5, and 3 and 5 are 8. And I don't remember any more of that. I learned that at school. It's fun. Oh, that sounds very mathematical. I have to go now. You have beautiful fruits, by the way. See you. Look at Mr. Midnight. Rat model? I didn't even see it. Oh, I'm so blind I can't see it properly. Oh no! Hold on. We're just gonna do this. Oh, that's so cute! No, sorry, I got way too close to my mic. That's so cute! Very adorable. Hello, lady. Is there any news? Good day. Would you like to read the newspaper? I can't read a thirst... What is Thirsta's language called? Don't you know? It's called Thirstinish. Are you a tourist? Yes, I'm a tourist. My name is Fran. I've never seen a tourist before, and I've never seen a Fran either. Welcome to Thirsta. I hope you have fun here. Thank you so much. I have to go now. Bye. What about the news? She forgot to tell me about the news. Hello, miss. I think you have very, very beautiful fruits. Thank you, dear. Would you like some? Oh no, I'm on a mission to return home, and I want to be hungry when I get there. Oh, so what part of Thirsta are you from? Is it outside the island? No, I'm not from Thirsta at all. I'm a human. Oh, a human. That's new. Well, I hope you complete your mission. Thank you, miss. I'm certain I will. Thank you. See you. Hello, I'm Fran. What are you doing? Good day. I'm Proter, and I'm modeling this piece of iron. Oh, for what? To deliver a few clock pieces to the clockmaker. Oh, I see. So you can make all kinds of metallic stuff. Sure, if you have some ideas, we can talk about it, and padam! I'll do it. That's very good to know. Thank you, sir. Well, I have to keep working, but if you need my services, you know where I am. Greetings. Are you interested in fabric and thread? I have some. Out of curiosity, miss, for what purpose do you use fabric? Everybody is naked. Well, whatever you need it for. We also have thread for making other things. I see. I have to go, miss, but have a nice day. If we go back in the fall, we can go into the Great Library. I have a bite of my dinner. Stop right there. Do you know the password? Oh no, what password? The library password, of course. You must have it to come inside. Do you know who has the password? Yes, the Great Wizard, of course. He knows everything. Alright. I can see if I can find the password then. Bye. Alright, back to the Great Wizard. Well, we can at least give him, the feather. Look at Mr. Midnight. I keep wanting to call him Onyx. That's a different cat. Onyx is being a grouch, as always. The sassy bugger. Kitty, I'm gonna do something, so act natural. Oh, an accidentally dropped lemon. I think I'll keep it. Alright. So I got those two. I need 2 left. I got 2 left to find. Let me in! You won't let me in. But how are you, Peach? I hope you're having fun. I hope y'all are having a good time. Sir, please give me a clue or something. I need your help. Help? I am already helping you. If you want me to solve it for you, then you wouldn't learn anything. Time and space are great, and answers can be found everywhere, but they're always there. I'm sure you'll find the answers. Never give up. Okay. This needs to go here. Alright, well, I was hoping you would acknowledge the fact that I've got 2 of the things, but apparently not. I'm glad! I know I'm not the most talkative of streamers out there, but that's alright, hopefully. Alright, so I need... I got 2 of the things. Yet I still need 2 more. I know I need to get into the bar. Talk to this guy? I want to talk to this guy. Whoa, what a piece of metal. That looks grand. That's not what I wanted to do. Fall. Well, he's not here anymore. They're all still working away. And in the winter, everything is closed. Hello? Huh, everything looks so closed. Everyone must be inside their homes for sure. That's because it's cold. And there's nothing to do here. I couldn't get the password for the Great Library. If I go back this way to the bar. I know there's a way for Mr. Midnight to get in. Where did I end up? Oh wow, what are you? You look like those fairies from my books. The purest of feelings, the light of all material. We are Volcas. Oh, you're very shiny, and you make me feel so happy, so very happy. Look, creature, one of the young Volcas is going to receive the shield. Ombakma. Pimilgro. Omekig Gurahan. Soldier of the sun, creature from the soil, fruit from the seed. Let the universe illuminate you with the truth and be free. Huh? Where are you all going? We continue our paths to life. May freedom be with you, my friend. Sir, or miss? Can you do magical things? The universe is already doing magic all the time. You're full of magic yourself. But I want to know things, and it's odd. I feel like you know everything. We are the light. We are everywhere. What answers are you looking for? I want to know who killed my parents, and why is that big monster hunting me? The truth will come in those who seek. Your path towards truth is immense. You are living in a world that turns its back on you. You are too fragile to face the truth just now, and too strong to let it go. But don't be sad, dear. We have to keep going. She's like 10. Let her be sad. Her parents were killed, potentially by her. Unclear. That's not ever cleared up. And then she was tossed into a psych ward. Given experimental drugs. Unclear what I'm supposed to be doing with these hands. I don't know. Whoa, what a huge Velicus. It's not real though. What do I do with your hands? I'm just gonna let him do that. Oh, it's not even here in the winter. Oh, I wonder what this is. It's the bar. We know this. Huh, it must say something important. Huh. I know there's a way to get Mr. Midnight inside, but I don't know how. Look at him being a cute loaf. Alright, well, you're forever going to be dropping one lemon. Oh, a fishing rod. It seems to be broken. What are you whoaing about? I can get some thread for the fishing rod. Come closer, Fran. I have the one thing you desire. I have what you are looking for. Mommy, is that you? Mommy? My beloved daughter, come closer. Let me feel you. Mommy, I'm scared. There is nothing to be afraid of. You have to come closer, Fran. I want to kiss you. But you can't be my mother. She's dead. You have to come closer, now. If you don't, the big monster will come and get you. No, you're not my mommy. Leave me alone. My darling, the big monster will come and get you. He will come and get you. He will come and get you. Mommy, you're scaring me. Mommy, stop it, please. Fran's over here being traumatized at every corner. I need thread for the fishing rod. And buttons. No. Hello, miss. I'm wondering if you have some thread for this fishing line, do you? Fishing line? Thread. Yes, I have some. Do you want it? Aha, yes, please. How much is it? Well, quite a lot. Is that good? Oh, I meant price-wise, miss. I only need enough for fishing line. Oh, I forgot to think about the price. You see, I've never sold anything before. But you know what? You can have it. I hope it makes you happy. This is... Dang, this is what you would... Oh, you weren't here for the twins. The twins are pretty brutal. They were sewn together. They stole Mr. Midnight. Oh, wow, thank you, miss. I hope you come up with some prices and sell something soon. Bye. A fishing rod. It looks fantastic, but I need a hook. What's with the sad face? No! Let me steal your boat. Gotta wait for Mr. Midnight. Let's go do some fishing. Why can I not use the thread on the water? Yeah. It's one of those games. I mean, I could probably redo the poll now. It's been about an hour and a half. Oh, who has been pinging me so much at 2:30 a.m.? I have 5 pings. I'm gonna redo the poll for y'all. I'm still listening to royalty-free lullabies.
If you like smoking weed, let me hear you say hell yeah!
Hell yeah!
Gotcha. Get these motherfuckers.
Apparently, but why? Normally, on any other day, I'd be asleep by now. Watch, it's just Waze spamming me. Drink? Hydrate? Oh fuck. Yes, I shall hydrate. I have drank water. Why bonk? What do you mean could not end poll?
Emotional damage!
New poll. What do? Chat chooses BG3. Other. We're only gonna do it for, let's go 3 minutes. While that's going. I don't have a do I have a stretch? Oh, I was like, do I have a stretch routine? I do, it's Big Kitty Stretch. Because that's what I tell my cat when he stretches. It was Waze. It was all Waze. I think what'll probably end up happening, Waze, is I'll probably end up cutting her feet out of the picture. Stretch out my spine. Damn, y'all really want me to read a story? Y'all want story time? Bedtime story, put y'all to sleep with my boring books. Also, I think it's very funny that it was all Waze. It was just all of Waze spam. It wasn't actually spam, it was something we were talking about earlier. We discovered a piece of art that I had Waze do for, like a YouTube thumbnail. Won't actually fit, because YouTube lies about its sizing. So we have to adjust it. But I'm just like, I don't know how. Just wiggle sideways. So I'll show you the piece of artwork, Cause why not? Y'all ready to see my... Get rid of that one. Is it here? Ignore the fact that it's spelled wrong. So wait, I had Waze do this absolutely stunning, amazing piece. Everyone give Waze praise. Because Waze deserves it, and it's very pretty. Many soft claps for Waze, because I don't want to overload my mic. I'm just waiting for it to load. I don't know why it's being like this. This system hates me sometimes. I know, Waze is so good. But it doesn't fit the, like, YouTube thumbnail formatting, or just, like, YouTube in general. So I think what's gonna end up happening, so I'm not gonna do it currently, but I think I'll end up trimming, like, here down off-ish. Like, not just, like, in terms of the image. I'd keep the full image, because just fucking look at her. Because I plan on doing song covers. I know, Waze has such pretty art. Hold on, let me show off more of Waze's art. Hold on. I believe Waze did these ones too. Yes, these ones are Waze's too. Alternate animal designs, because fun fact, I'm not just a cat girl, I'm actually a shapeshifter. Kind of. It's weird. Magical experiments gone wrong. I think Bunny's in bed. But yes, they're very cute. There's more. I've got so much. I could show off Bunny's art too. I like showing off my friend's art. And then there's this one, which is another piece I had commissioned of them. You're just familiar? I love that. For those of you who saw my cooking stream, this outfit is not based off of the one I was wearing, but off of a very similar one. I do have a dress that actually has this pentagram on the chest. Why didn't I wear that one? Oh right, it's shorter at the front, but the tights I usually wear with it ripped, so I couldn't wear those ones. So I had to wear my longer dress. But Waze did this one too, which just... I love so much, guys. The urge to change it to my background screen. I have too many images I want as my phone background screen. Alright, I'm gonna... Who else? Look at my terrible spelling. I can't remember the name of this artist. I can't find them again, which is unfortunate. A friend of mine, Luna, recommended them to me. But they were the... if it unblurs. This is one of the, first images I got done of Rune. And it is absolutely one of my favorites. It's so good. Like, she looks so good. I use this one when I'm feeling spicy. She gives very spicy vibes. This artist also did my, reference for my, Tiefling Barbarian. And then I was like, oh my god, I love his art, so I got, well, technically Sakura did the very first version of Rune, as she's the one who did my reference, and then this was the one that came after, and I love it a lot. I know, a lot of it is, stuff that Sakura did, because Sakura often just throws things at me and it's just like, here. You know what? I'm gonna go into my super top secret. Dan messaged me. I will message him back in a bit. Oh, shit. Look at my VTuber storage Discord. Song cover stuff. This is where I keep all of my stuff. So that way I can find it. Oh, the art is tasty. I need to make this into an emote. Because art is tasty. This one was done by Sakura. I will get to reading here soon. I need to show off all of the art my friends have made me because I love them so much. Got some art done by Cloud. This is one of the ones that is actually hanging up in my room. Because my uncle Winterwolf, who did this piece, he did this piece of rune. He talked to Cloud and Sakura for my birthday and got me prints. And those were the only 3 pieces of work other than my one other piece, but he didn't have access to that one. And they together got them for me for my birthday, and they are hung up right in front of my computer. I am looking at them right now. They're right in front of my computer. This one's another one of my absolute favorite pieces by Cloud. I love this piece. I'm pretty sure Cloud has no idea what any of these runes mean, but that's okay. Like there's like prosperity, wealth, luck, health. This is another one of my favorite pieces. I love all the beautiful work. Like this one, by my friend Eden. It's very fun. I got these ones from my cousins. They're very cute. Hello! How are you, Dan? Yeah, you could ask. So all the runes that are on my skirt are Elder Futhark runes. They all do have meaning. There's luck, prosperity, health, success, wealth, trust. Actually, hold on. I might be able to find... That's D&D stuff. Clips, thumbnails. These are all my emotes. So many emotes. Angry Sakura emote. Friend art. I like how there's fan art and friend art. Other stuff. Random links to shit. This is my boy Sawyer. He's completely something else. This is just... Oh, your stuff actually came in! Oh, that's so exciting! I'm so excited, Dan! Are they good quality? I hope they're good quality. I'm so happy. Cloud got her stuff in too, and was showing them off, and I'm just like, my heart, man. Oh, it makes me so happy. I'm so glad. But yeah, I got distracted and was showing off all the wonderful art that my many friends have made me over the time that I've been streaming. This one's Sakura and I. Sakura is an IRL friend of mine, hence why they tend to do a lot of art of the pair of us. They did Vocaloid outfits, which are very cute. I know they are! She's so good. This one's one of my favorite ones, and anyone who doesn't know what's happening in this image is just like, that's not an aesthetic I would usually wear. But these are the outfits we wore when we went to go see the Barbie movie. We went with we did Barbenheimer. So I went as Ken, Sakura went as Barbie, and then our two other friends went as Goth Ken and Barbie. And it was a great time. But that's what this is. I still have this shirt in my closet. It's got pink seashells on it, but she didn't want to draw the seashells, so she made them dots instead. Ironically, it was very close to what Ken was actually wearing in the movie. I bought the shirt specifically for this, and I have never worn it again, because it is so not my style. This one, which is one of Bunny's pieces. I love this one. Bunny actually managed to incorporate the potion belt, because before I had, let's see. Oh, nope, that's not. Before I had this chain, you can't see it very well, but before I had this chain, Sakura and I tried to figure out a way to make it a potion belt. But because the way my bust is, it just wasn't gonna work, so we ended up going with this. I know! Everyone draws my character! Everyone draws me so good! Onyx, why are you running away, you bitch? I just got random shit everywhere. It's honestly not as organized as it could be. I really do need to organize it a little bit better. But some of the original emotes, I have more emotes in mind. I plan on commissioning Bunny for more emotes, in February. Oh yeah, everything is just kind of chaos. I really like this piece of Sakura. Sakura recently got a redesign, or an upgrade. I don't know if it's a full-on redesign or if it's just a new temporary outfit. But yeah. This is another one of my favorite pieces. It kind of looks like that says no. It's another piece done by Sakura. It's very cute. It's like a little sleepover piece. But yeah, there are some, and then there's all the male rune pieces that have been made so far. I was talking to all my friends, and I was like, "Hello, friends. Design gender bent rune. What does he look like to you?" And oh boy, we got some hotties. But like, look at him. Y'all did such a good job. I believe this one is Wheeze. I like how y'all incorporated the different elements. Like how you've made the waist chain into like a cloak chain. Also, look at Onyx being cute. I like how y'all, I think y'all agreed on like a ponytail. Can't really tell with Waze if that's a ponytail or just hair floof. Look at him, he's so sassy. Look at little Onyx down here being all adorable. They're all so good. I like that that two of you took the like butt skirt thing that I got going on and made it into just a cape. I guess very interesting seeing what y'all did, and I love them all so much. Y'all did a wonderful job. Anyway, I got very distracted. I was gonna read a book, cause y'all said yes please. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open this. And we're gonna go to YouTube. And we're gonna not look at Loser Baby again. Because I've only been singing it for like a week straight. No, I have not seen the most recent episodes that just came out today. I'm dying to. And we're gonna just, let's go campfire. Campfire sounds. Let's do something like we don't... Alright. How's the, I'll get rid of Frambeau, because we don't need it. How's the audio? Everything sound balanced? I know, I plan on watching them in the morning. Lovely. Alright. I know Poppy's heard of this book. But have you, Wheeze? It's called Margret and the Moth Tree. Have you heard of it? I'm just gonna munch on some dinner while I wait. That's okay, that's okay. You moving to your laptop so you can get ready to get cozy and have a nap? No, you have not. So when I was little, like 3rd or 4th grade little, I joined the book club because I was a nerd. And one of the books that we had to read for that year was Margret and the Moth Tree. And I loved the book so much that I ended up buying my own copy so I could read it again and again. And it's a book that resonated very deeply with me. And it actually inspired me. When I was done reading this book, I decided that I wanted to become an orphanage matron, because that is where a large portion of the book takes place, is in an orphanage. Now, when I was doing research, in like a couple years later, I discovered that orphanages don't exist anymore. So I pivoted to a child social worker. Unfortunately, as I got older, I realized that as much as I'd love to help those kids, I feel like it'd be too much of a heavy burden, and I don't think I'd be able to see kids in the situations that would require a social worker. Especially having my own incident with with CPS at one point. That's a whole thing. And the way the woman looked at me, I was in high school at that point, and it was just, I couldn't. I was like, no. But I do want to adopt kids. And I want to, or foster. At some point in the future. It is still something that resonates with me deeply. But yeah, so I wanted to share it, and I figure I could read it to you guys. If you wanted to. I know it's not your typical stream. But yeah, a nice calm stream. It's a little bit weird. I'm a little bit anxious now. So, Margret and the Moth Tree by Brit Trogen and Kari Trogen. Chapter 1. The Sad House. If this were a proper world, beautiful faces would belong to beautiful people. Good people with kind hearts and clever minds would always have bright eyes and dazzling smiles, and bad people would have scraggly hair and warty noses. That way, if you saw one of them coming, you could cross to the other side of the street and avoid them altogether. But this is not a proper world. In our world, many bad people look quite nice, and many good people are not beautiful at all. Many good people aren't pretty or cute or even interesting looking. A very small girl named Margret Grey was one of these. "I don't want her," said a woman with thick spectacles and white-pinned hair up in a bun. "I don't want her either," said a man with dirty fingernails. The reason Margret was so small was that she was a toddler. Though as toddlers go, she was not a very adorable one. She had plain brown hair and plain brown eyes and a plain little face that gave no hint that, even at 1.5, she was both kind-hearted and clever. She was the type of child most people would call unremarkable. She was sitting on the floor of a very sad house. The man and the woman were staring down at her, and Margret, who was holding a rattle, was staring back. The house was called Grey Cottage, and it had a large sign on its front door that said, "Foreclosed by the bank." It was really quite a nice house, aside from the sign, and it hadn't always been a sad place. Until recently it had belonged to a couple called Anthony and Lillian Grey, and until recently this couple had been Margret's parents. Anthony and Lillian Grey were the type of parents you might wish for when your own are acting unreasonable. They took Margret to the petting zoo and put on shadow puppet shows and made up stories with funny voices. But here is where the sadness comes in. Anthony and Lillian Grey had recently perished in a freak car accident. The Grey Cottage no longer belonged to anyone. 2 burly men were carrying bookcases and potted plants out its front door, and young Margret was looking from one strange grown-up to the other, wondering which of them was going to take her. "You'll have to take her," said the woman, who was called Great Aunt Linda. "I'm unfamiliar with toddlers," said the man, who was called Cousin Amos. "Don't talk back to me. I'm old, and old people must be humored," said the woman, meaning that sometimes you have to do what old people tell you to keep them from getting snippy. It is true that old people must be humored, just as it is true that small toddlers need to be housed somewhere. So the grumbling man called Amos took Margret by the hand, and that was that. Chapter 2. A Lack of Greys. If you are very lucky and you have a more or less enjoyable life, you may not know much about lack. Lack is a way of saying you're missing something important. Margret, for example, lacked parents, which meant she had to live with Cousin Amos, and Cousin Amos lacked a great many things. He lived in a creaky old house covered in peeling paint, with a garden full of prickly weeds. His house lacked many of the things that toddlers need, like cuddly teddy bears and childproof corners and personal hygiene. Amos was a lifelong bachelor, which meant he never cooked or cleaned at all if he could avoid it. His kitchen was foul, his bathroom even worse, and he hadn't washed his socks in 3 years. But the thing that was most lacking in Cousin Asmos's house was conversation. Amos dreaded talking, and he never spoke to anyone unless he absolutely had to. Even then, he would limit himself to talking about vegetables or economics, because years of experience had taught him that these topics were guaranteed to put a stop to any conversation and allow him to return to his favorite habit of not talking. So when Amos became Margret's guardian, her small vocabulary of the words data, moose, and eggplant became completely unnecessary. Instead of saying, "Please pass the Brussels sprouts," at mealtimes, Asmos would point and grunt. Instead of saying, "Good night, Margret, don't let the bed bugs bite," at bedtime, Asmos would pat her twice on the head and turn off the lights. Instead of saying, "I'm so sorry about your parents, is there anything I can do to make you feel better?" Asmos didn't think to say anything at all. When you spend a lot of time in a perfectly quiet house surrounded by perfectly quiet people, you have little choice but to be very quiet yourself. This is just what happens to Margret Grey. Without any brothers or sisters or playmates to shout and scream and holler with, Margret didn't do the shouting and screaming and hollering that most children do. When she talked with the milkman on the step each morning, he could never stay long before continuing on his way. When she whispered to the German nanny over breakfast, the most she ever got in return was a nod or a closed-lipped smile. And as soon as Margret seemed old enough to look after herself, Amos got rid of the nanny altogether, and Margret's world grew quieter still. The life of a quiet girl in a quiet house may not seem a very remarkable thing, but Margret learned something in Asmos's house that very few know how to do. Margret learned how to listen. You probably think that you know how to listen, and in a way, you are right. You know how to listen to the radio or to listen to someone sing in the shower, but Margret's kind of listening was not the usual kind. Margret learned how to really, truly listen, which is something that very few ever come to do. By the time she was 4 years old, Margret could hear things that even excellent whispers have trouble detecting, like a barn owl swooping through the air and the sound of the neighbor's cat yawning. At 4.5, she could hear the leaves falling in the yard and a mouse behind the wall chewing a bit of cheese. Damn, we haven't even gotten to the harrowing stuff. And by the age of 5, she could hear things that only few people in the world have ever heard, like shadows creeping across the floorboards, or the first ray of sunlight as they pass through the window. It is entirely possible that with even a few more years of practice, Margret could have even learned to listen to the very deepest and most secret thoughts that dance through people's minds. But this is not what happened, because shortly after Margret's 5th birthday, when Cousin Amos died suddenly of antisanatosis, Margret went to live with Great Aunt Linda, and from that point on, her life became very different. I never thought I'd have to spend my golden years looking after a child, Great Aunt Linda said for the first time she shooed Margret through her door. Life is full of surprises. I'm sorry, Auntie, said Margret. Great Aunt Linda was an old maid, which is exactly the opposite of a lifelong bachelor. Her house was spick and span, with fancy pillows on every chair and lacy tablecloths on every table, and half a dozen hypoallergenic cats. Unlike Cousin Asmos, who said hardly anything at all, Great Aunt Linda liked the sound of her own voice. She was especially fond of neat little phrases that don't really mean anything, like life is full of surprises. Idle hands are the devil's playthings, she said on the morning of Margret's arrival, handing her a piece of embroidery. Too many cooks spoil the broth, she said on the way to play backgammon. Backgammon? Ugh, that's a word I never figured out. Shooing Margret into the kitchen to make soup. Children should be seen and not heard, she said, when Margret opened her mouth to say she'd never made soup. And so it was that instead of... Onyx is meowing at my door. I don't know why. The door is open. And so it was that instead of a house filled with quiet, Margret found herself in a house filled with the mews of 6 hairless cats and the endless chattering of her great aunt. Great Aunt Linda taught Margret to read using passages from her favorite etiquette books, and gave her weekly quizzes on topics like the art of polite conversation and forks and their uses. As a reward for perfect marks, Margret was taken to backgammon night, where other old ladies gave her butter tarts in the corner of a stuffy room. As time went by, Margret grew into a very polite little girl, but the marvelous listening skills she had at Amos's house became rusty. When she tried to listen for the first rays of sunlight, all she could ever hear were the mewing of cats. When she tried to listen to the falling autumn leaves, they were drowned out by Great Aunt Linda's favorite radio drama. And soon she stopped listening altogether. You see, any talent that isn't used will eventually be lost. By the time Margret reached her 6th birthday, she could no longer hear any of the quiet sounds that had once filled her small world. And by the time Great Aunt Linda died of old age 4 years later, Margret had forgotten she had ever heard them at all. He always has permission. Chapter 3. The CLC. After Great Aunt Linda's funeral, the backgammon ladies herded Margret out the church door, told her to mind her manners and shoot her onto a crowded bus. "Going to Hopeton, eh?" asked her seatmate, a wrinkled old man who smelled faintly of cough drops. "To that charity. What's it called? The Worried Woman's Group or something?" Margret nodded, grabbing hold of the seat in front of her as the bus lurched forward. As she settled into her seat and the man settled into a coughing fit, she had the chance, for the first time in many days, to think about her situation. Margret now lacked a great many things a young girl should have. She had no home, no family, and no possessions save for a ratty tweed bag that had once belonged to Cousin Amos. Her hair was a mess of knots, as no one thought to comb it in 3 days, and the tight black dress she had worn to the funeral pinched painfully under her arms. Some people in Margaret's place might sit around feeling sorry for themselves, but if she had learned anything from Great Aunt Linda, it was that well-brought-up people should always keep a stiff upper lip. This was Linda's way of saying that you should just get on with things instead of moping. So, as Margaret was jerked and jostled and coughed on during that long and uncomfortable ride, she tried her best to feel hopeful about what lay ahead. After several cramped and bumpy hours, the bus came to a stop. "CLC," said the driver. "That's you," he added, bobbing his head at Margaret, who made her way to the front of the bus. Stepping out onto the sidewalk, she looked around. She was standing on a quiet street of narrow buildings, trimly painted in pastel yellows, peaches, and blues. There was no one in sight, but the building directly in front of her stood out from the rest. It was a smart red brick. Hanging over its door was a sign. On the sign there were large curlicue letters that read, "The Concerned Ladies Club." And below them, in smaller letters, "Finding a home for the pitiful foundling for over 37 years. As Margaret stared up at the sign, her eyes fixed themselves on 4 letters. H-O-M-E. Taking a deep breath, she walked up the steps, stretched onto the tip of her toes, and knocked on the door with a large bronze knocker that was carved into the shape of a hand. "Yes?" said a voice, though there didn't seem to be anyone there. "Hello?" said Margaret. "Who's there?" said a voice, and Margaret realized that it was coming from a mail slot set in the door. She stretched up to look through the slot and saw a pair of large, bulgy eyes peering back at her. "I'm Margaret Gray," she told the eyes. "I'd like a home, please." The eyes narrowed. "Are you a foundling?" said the voice. "I think so," Margaret said. "Are you pitiful?" The eyes bulged even more as they stared down at her knotted hair and ratty tweed bag. "I suppose," Margaret said. The eyes disappeared and the mail slot snapped shut. A moment later, Margaret heard the scraping of locks being turned, and the door swung open to reveal a short, dumpy old lady wearing a lacy pink dress. In addition to bulgy eyes, she had bluish-gray hair that was pinned up in tight curls all over her head. She smiled a toothy smile. "Welcome," she said, "to the Concerned Ladies Club." Margaret smiled back. "Follow me," the lady said. Margaret followed her down a narrow hallway. They came to a room with a desk, and sitting behind the desk was another elderly lady, this one wearing a purple pantsuit. "I found one," said the dumpy lady. The lady behind the desk looked up. She was thin and bird-like, with large glasses and a long, pointy nose. "Procedure, Prudence," she said, looking concerned. "Oops," said the dumpy lady, who was called Prudence. "I almost forgot." Taking hold of Margaret's sleeve, she cleared her throat noisily. "Admission request for one pitiful foundling to the care of the CLC." "Granted," said the bird-like lady. She stared at Margaret over the tops of her glasses. "Humph," she said. "I suppose she'll do. Leave us, Prudy." Prudy bobbed her head and set back off down the hall. The birdish lady pointed at one of the chairs. "Sit," she said. Margaret sat. The lady took a sheet of paper from one of the desk drawers. "Name?" she asked, without looking up. "Margaret Gray," Margaret said. The lady peered up over the tops of her glasses. "With whom were you staying before now?" "My great Aunt Linda." "Hm," said the lady, scribbling on the paper. "And where is your great Aunt Linda now?" "Tired of taking care of you, I suppose. Probably gone on vacation to the Netherlands." "No," Margaret said. "She died." "Humph," said the lady again, as if that was a very inconsiderate thing for a person to do. "What are your ambitions in the world?" "I beg your pardon?" said Margaret. "Your ambitions, girl," said the lady. "Surely you don't intend to be a silly little child for the rest of your life. I, for example, started my career in knitting, then moved into philanthropy. What do you intend to do?" "I don't know," said Margaret. "Tisk," said the lady, shaking her head. She jotted something down on the paper. "Well, you ought to be very grateful. We've got a place for you at the Hopeton Orphanage." "Oh," said Margaret, who didn't feel especially grateful, but tried her best to look it. "Thank you." But the bird-like lady wasn't listening. "Hannah!" she shouted suddenly, peering out the office door. "Hannah!" After another moment, another woman appeared in the room. She wasn't dumpy like the woman who'd answered the door, or birdish like the woman at the desk. She wasn't very old or very young. In fact, if you were seeing her for the first time, you wouldn't think there was anything really remarkable about her at all, unless you looked into her hazel eyes and saw the depth of kindness there. "Hannah," said the bird-like lady, "prepare the car. We are taking Marjorie to her new home." "Margret," corrected Margret. "Humph," said the bird-like lady. The unremarkable face of the lady named Hannah blossomed into a warm smile. "How wonderful," she said, her voice soft as feathers. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Margret. I'm Hannah Tender." Hannah's hazel eyes met Margaret's brown ones, and though Margaret still knew she was alone in the world, she felt somehow a little safer. Yes, yes," said the bird-like lady. "Follow procedure, please, Hannah. The car." "Right away, Gertrude." Hannah gave Margaret another warm smile, then hurried from the room. "Very well, child," continued the bird-like lady, whose name, it appeared, was Gertrude. "I assume you don't need anything else." Margaret was tired, hungry, and rather in need of a good scrubbing, but not wanting to be a bother, she shook her head politely. "Good," said Gertrude. "I'll telephone Miss Switch, then, and we'll be off." And before Margaret could ask who Miss Switch might be, Gertrude had shooed her out into the hallway and shut the door. How are you guys enjoying the story so far? I know we're not very far in. Chapter 4. The Orphanage. If there has ever been a time in your life when you have wanted something to come right away, like Christmas morning, or your birthday, or the day you will no longer be alone in the world, then you know that the more you want something to hurry up and arrive, the longer it is likely to take. And so, as Margaret gazed out the windows of a shining pink car, watching as the streets of the town gave way to trees and rolling hills, the drive to Hopeton Orphanage seemed to last forever. "Don't daydream, child," says Gertrude, who was driving the car. "It causes warts." "That it does," agreed Prudy, who was in the front seat. "You must be nervous," whispered Hannah, who was sitting next to Margaret in the back of the car. "Keep your head squarely on your shoulders," Gertrude continued. "There's nothing like lemon juice to get rid of warts," said Prudy. "Yes," Margaret whispered back, staring up at Hannah. "I just hope they like me." Hannah smiled. "They'll love you," she whispered. And then, as if she were reading Margaret's mind, "Don't worry, we're almost there." Yeah, that's fair. I kind of expected that to happen. Sure enough, only a few minutes later, and the dirt road carried them over the top of the hill. "There," breathed Hannah, pointing off into the distance. Margaret caught her breath. At the end of the road was an enormous white-garbled house. Wide windows shone across the front of the building, in the light of the sun, and a gleaming porch circled around it. As they came nearer, Margaret saw the children wearing lovely red and blue coveralls were playing on the porch steps. It had bushes of budding roses on the lawn on either side. The children were smiling and waved happily at the car as it approached. "Here we are," said Gertrude. "The Hopeton Orphanage." Margaret's great-aunt Linda had often said, "You should never judge a book by its cover." This is very difficult advice to follow, as the cover of a book can often tell you a great deal about whether or not it is something you might want to read. If you saw a book with a plain white cover that was called An Introduction to Economics, you would likely put it down and walk away. But if the book had a colorful picture on the front that was called something delightful, like The Mystery of the Dragon's Egg or Adventures on Jungle Rock Island, you'd probably snatch it off the shelf in an instant. Oh no! So you can hardly blame Margaret when she saw the enormous house that was to be her home and the happy children who were to be her friends, for judging the Hopeton Orphanage was going to be a wonderful place to live. Gertrude pulled the car around in a wide circle and came to a stop. Just then, the front door of the house swung open and a woman stepped out. If Margaret had been excited before, she was now close to bursting, because her first impressions of this woman is that she was the most beautiful person Margaret had ever seen. The woman was tall, with silky golden hair and creamy skin. She was wearing a plain gray dress with tattered flower print apron tied around her waist, and the dustings of flour was brushed lightly across her hands and one cheek. When she looked up at the car, her face broke into a dazzling smile. The children parted before her as she descended the steps, and Gertrude, Prudy, and Hannah climbed out of the car. "Gertrude, Prudence," said the woman, wiping her hands on her apron and waving at them. "Miss Switch," said Gertrude, "how nice to see you again." "Hello, Hannah," said Miss Switch with a small nod. "This must be our new arrival." She opened Margaret's door and leaned down so that they were eye to eye. "Hello, darling." "Hello," said Margaret, feeling dizzy. The beautiful woman smelled like fresh-baked bread, and she was looking into Margaret's eyes exactly as Margaret had always believed a mother would. "Why don't you come out to meet your new family?" Miss Switch held out a soft hand, which Margaret took as she climbed out of the car. Everything seemed to be happening in a blur. "Children," said Miss Switch, "say hello to our new sister, Margaret." The fact that this beautiful woman knew her name was almost too much to take in, and Margaret barely heard as the children called out, "Hello, Margaret!" in a chorus of voices. As Miss Switch led her up the gleaming white steps and through the front door, it seemed to Margaret as though she was walking into a dream. The house was warm and cozy, with comfy chairs and plush carpets and velvet drapes hanging from the windows. Miss Switch led Margaret into the dining room, where an enormous carved table was laid with silver platters of strawberries and cookies and tarts and cakes. It was more food than Margaret had ever seen in her life. She shivered with delight. "Are you cold, dear?" Miss Switch asked. Without waiting for an answer, she produced a delicate red shawl, which she draped over Margaret's shoulders. It was soft as silk and the nicest piece of clothing Margaret had ever worn. When she breathed it in, a delicious perfume filled her nose. Hannah followed them inside and smiled when she saw the joy on Margaret's face. "I see everything here still as lovely as I remember it," she said, looking at Miss Switch. Miss Switch smiled too, revealing 2 rows of even, pearly teeth. "Of course, Hannah dear. We were just about to sit down for tea." Turning from Hannah, she put a soft hand on Margaret's shoulder. "I hope you're hungry, sweetling." Margaret nodded, wide-eyed and feeling she might burst into tears from so much happiness. "Now then," said Gertrude, who had walked in with a purple clipboard. "Miss Switch, do you accept full responsibility for this pitiful foundling and hereby take guardianship of her from the CLC from this point forward?" "I do," said Miss Switch. "And Marjorie," Gertrude said, reading from the paper, "do you agree to this arrangement as well?" "Yes," breathed Margaret, voice barely louder than a whisper. "Fine," Gertrude said, marking check marks onto her clipboard. "I'll just finish up this paperwork and we'll be on our way." "Are you sure you won't stay for tea, Gertrude?" said Miss Switch, turning from Margaret to the dining table. "We shouldn't. Procedure, you know," said Gertrude, reaching for a piece of poppy seed cake. Margaret gazed out the window, where the red and blue-clad children had begun a game of tag on the lawn. She had never seen so many children before, and her eyes darted from one to the other excitedly. As she watched, one pretty dark-haired girl ran past a smiling, scrawny boy, striking him hard across the back. A look of pain crossed the boy's face for a split second, but it was quickly replaced by a new, even wider smile. Margaret thought this seemed a little strange, but before she could glimpse any more— "All done," said Gertrude, wiping her mouth and snapping the clipboard shut. "Such a pleasure, as always, ladies," Miss Switch said, ushering Gertrude at the door. "It's time for us to go, Margaret," said Hannah, dropping to her knees. "Good luck," she whispered, "and call us if you need anything." "Thanks," said Margaret, "but I don't think I will." Hannah pulled her into a gentle hug. Bleep! The car horn blared outside, making them both jump. Then, with a last smile, Hannah ran to join the others. Trailing behind, Margaret was just in time to see the shiny pink car dart off down the road, raising a cloud of dust behind it. Miss Switch was waving a handkerchief, and Margaret stood beside her and waved too. "Goodbye," she called out, "and thank you." She watched the dust settle on the road and hoped that soon she, too, would be settled. Gone were the thoughts of bossy old ladies and crowded buses and mysterious signs on quiet streets. From now on, this wonderful place would be her home, and these wonderful people, her family. Chapter 5. Philanthropy. At this happy and hopeful point in our tale, let us leave Margaret to enjoy herself for just a moment. Let us leave that important day and go back to one that came long before it. If you have passed enough time in this world, you will have noticed that every great event is the result of many smaller things that happened before it. Had Cousin Amos had put more stock in washing his socks, for instance, he might have never caught antisanatosis. Had Margret not run out of parents and relatives to take care of her, she might have never come to the Hopton orphanage. And had a certain town meeting not taken place many years before that, the Hopton orphanage might not ever have come to existence at all. "Order!" cried the mayor to the townspeople at this very meeting. The young mayor, who was called Harold Picklewort, banged a small gavel against his podium. There was very little noise in the town hall, since the people of Hopton prided themselves on manners, but Mayor Picklewort greatly overjoyed banging his gavel. "Order!" he cried again, with 3 more bangs for good measure. He cleared his throat loudly. "We are here today to discuss philanthropy," he said, pausing to let the grandness of this word sink in. "As you all know," he continued, "over in Munsfield they've recently turned their general store into a soup kitchen." Angry mutterings rose from the crowd. "Yes," said the mayor, "once again Munsfield is trying to show us up, trying to make us look bad, which is why we need to figure out what sort of philanthropy we're going to do in turn. We can't let them get away with this." The crowd of heads nodded in agreement. True philanthropy is a wonderful thing. If you have ever reunited a baby with its lost teddy bear, or helped an old granny cross the road, or returned a missing wallet to its owner, you have done a bit of philanthropy yourself, as long as you didn't take any money from the wallet, granny, or baby. True philanthropy is doing something kind for someone else without giving the slightest bit of thought to yourself. Unfortunately, true philanthropy is not quite what the mayor had brought the Hoptoniers together to discuss. A woman in the front row raised her hand. "How about a homeless shelter?" she asked. "Definitely not," said the mayor. "The hobos might start sleeping in it. The last thing we want is a bunch of hobos mussing up our philanthropy." Mutters of agreement came from around the room, and the woman in the front row sank down into her chair. "Why don't we build a soup kitchen too?" someone said. "An even bigger soup kitchen." The mayor shook his head. No. If we do that, the Munsfielders will just say we copied them. There's got to be some philanthropy we can do that will really make them squirm in their boots." The townsfolk furrowed their brows and fell into thinking about squirming Munsfielders. "What about something for children?" came a voice near the back of the hall. The mayor's face lit up. "Yes," he shouted. "Something for children. Everybody likes children, don't they?" "An orphanage!" cried a thin, bird-like woman with a long, pointy nose. "Somewhere to put all the stray ragamuffins nobody wants. And far away from here, so they won't hang around our nice town." The room began to buzz with excitement. "Bingo," said the mayor. "An orphanage is much more philanthropic than a stuffy kitchen. That'll show those soup-sniffing Munsfielders." "I quite agree," said a gravelly voice, and everyone turned to look at an important-looking old gentleman with bushy eyebrows, whose name was Professor Thrumble. Professor Thrumble was the most well-educated man in town, having spent many long years reading long, serious books, and many more years putting the school children of Hopton to sleep with long and serious lectures. "An orphanage," said Professor Thrumble, "is the perfect place to educate the excess population. It will prepare them for useful roles in society, should they ever cease to be children." "Indeed," said the bird-like woman, pleased that someone so well-educated had approved of her idea. "As chairwoman of the Knitting Society," she said, "I will take charge for rounding up the orphans. I am very concerned for these pitiful foundlings." "So am I," said a dumpy woman with large, bulgy eyes. "Very concerned." "Shush, Prudy," said the bird-like woman, who, if you hadn't guessed, was Gertrude. "Allow me to say a few words," said the professor, and several of his listeners got ready to take a short nap. He was known for making long and serious speeches to people whether they were children or not. On that particular day, he gave a speech on the dangers of uneducated orphans. "In conclusion," he finished 15 minutes later, "if you should need a mobile mind to guide these stray youths, I shall be happy to offer my wisdom." The professor gave a deep bow, Gertrude burst into applause, and Mayor Picklewort, who had dozed off, shook himself awake and gave several loud bangs of his gavel. "It's settled, then," the mayor shouted, waking up the rest of the hall. "Professor Thumble will take the post of master at the new orphanage." And with the mayor banging his gavel and the townspeople chose on a site on the very edge of the town limits on which to build their orphanage. "We'll build a place for misplaced infants," they cried. A home for homeless tots. Oh, I can't wait to see the looks on those Muntsfielders' faces. After the meeting, the townsfolk trundled back to their cozy homes, and most of them never thought about philanthropy again, except to inform any Muntsfielder who hadn't heard of it. This meeting led to quite a lot of paperwork, which led to quite a lot of money from the town treasury, which went to Gertrude and Prudis, and then was mostly forgotten. And a few years after that, on an unwanted plot of land at the very edge of town, the Hopetoun Orphanage opened its doors. They were the very same doors, in fact, that opened many years later to Margaret Grey. The same doors that led her to a home filled with happy, laughing children, piles of wonderful things to eat, and the beautiful, smiling Miss Switch. I'm going to have a drink of water. Also, Onyx was yelling at me. I know, between the lullabies, the campfire sounds, and my reading, I'm going to be surprised if any of you guys are awake at the end of stream. I don't know. I mean, it's currently like 3:30 for me. I mean, yeah, I guess it is technically right now. I know, it's like half my intention to put everyone to sleep. Like, I don't plan a raid at the end of this stream. I'm just gonna end stream. Because I kind of expect everyone to be... Well, you have to be awake. But by hell, I'm gonna put Waze to sleep. Chapter 6. The Switch. When we last saw Margaret Grey, she was waving goodbye to a pink car, watching the dust settle on a long dirt road and hoping great hopes about her new life. Why are you sad? You're sad doodling? Just at that moment, a firm hand gripped her shoulder, making her turn around. Miss Switch was towering over her, her eyes following the pink car as it disappeared over a hill. "Come now, dear," Miss Switch said, placing her other hand on Margaret's back and pushed her into the house. The rest of the children filed in behind them. Margaret smiled, hoping to make a good first impression, but no one smiled back. "Would you like help laying out the tea?" she asked, having always been taught to be a helpful houseguest. There were several moments of empty silence. Margaret looked around, wondering if perhaps no one had heard her. A change seemed to have come over the house, though Margaret couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. All around the entry hall, the other children were looking at her very strangely. One small, mousy-looking girl shook her head solemnly from side to side, her eyes wide. Said Margaret. "Miss Switch?" Miss Switch didn't answer. Instead, she did a very odd thing. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a thin, golden whistle. She put the whistle in her mouth and blew. Tweet! At the sound, the entire house seemed to come alive. The children scattered in all directions. They ran into the kitchen and the dining room and the entryway, grabbing and pulling at everything around them as they went. Within moments, the silver trays of cookies and tarts had disappeared into boxes, which disappeared into the kitchen. The lovely plush carpets and velvet drapes were yanked from their places and rolled up into tight little bundles that were carried away. Large white sheets were draped over soft chairs, and splintery wooden stools were set around the table instead. And the orphans were changing too. They were helping each other out of their bright coveralls to reveal shabby gray clothes that looked as if they had been made from potato sacks. "Hey!" cried Margaret, for several children had surrounded her and were pulling away her new shawl. It may be that you do not understand what is happening, and if that is the case, you know exactly how poor Margaret was feeling. Before her eyes, the orphanage was changing from a beautiful, warm home to a cold, dingy house. And Miss Switch, whom only moments before had been wearing a tattered flower print apron, had transformed. She pulled off her apron and unbuttoned her plain gray dress to reveal a luxurious red silk one beneath. Children had come running down the stairs carrying jewelry, strands of pearls and glittering stones, which they were draping one after another around Miss Switch's long neck. Another change had taken place, an even more terrible change. Miss Switch's beautiful face, which moments before had been filled with tenderness and motherly affection, was now sinister and cold. Her smile had hardened and turned positively carnivorous. Margaret stared at her in horror. "What's going on?" Miss Switch looked down at her in a way that made Margret feel very small indeed. I am matron here, she said with a sneer, and you, Dreg, will call me Miss Switch. She snapped her long fingers, and a pretty blonde girl who looked about 13 stepped forward. The girl was smiling at Margret, but it was not the warm smile of welcome. It was the type of smile a hyena might give a tasty mutton chop right before devouring it. Every morning, Dreg, the girl said, you will wake up at sunrise and make your bed. You will gather the laundry and sweep the floors. Then you will go to the kitchen and make breakfast for your superiors. After that, you will get 4 minutes to eat your breakfast mush. Then you will scrub the bathtubs and polish the toilets. The girl went on, listing chore after chore to be done, while Margret looked around in shock. From the faces of the other children, she could see that they, too, were forced to pluck weeds and scrub floors and wash dishes every hour of the day. She turned desperately to Miss Switch, who was admiring her own glittery reflection in a large mirror on the wall. Miss Switch, she said, reaching out to touch the matron's dress. Please, I don't understand. Miss Switch spun around, slapping Margret's hand from her dress with a loud clap. You will do as I tell you, she said fiercely. You are a worthless dreg. Nobody wants you, nobody likes you. And if you don't do as I say, I'll throw you out of your bed in the middle of night and you will be gobbled up by rabid raccoons. Margret cradled her hand, her eyes filling with tears from the slap. But instead of apologizing or kissing it better, or doing any of the things a mother should do, Miss Switch began to laugh. It was a cold, harsh sound, like the screeching of a crow. And with a last grin at Margret's disbelieving face, she swept out of the room. For you see, every story has a villain. And in case you hadn't guessed, the villain of this story is Miss Switch. This is a book I read when I was around Margret's age. I think it's part of the reason why it had such a heavy impact on me. Chapter 7. The Home of the Dregs. On her first night at Hopetoun Orphanage, Margret cried herself into a fitful sleep. When she awoke the next morning in her lumpy bed, several moments passed before she remembered where she was. But when a scowling boy with chestnut curls appeared and shook her roughly by the shoulders, the events of the previous day came rushing back. Up, Dreg, he shouted. Make your bed. Margret blinked around the rows of narrowed beds and yawning orphans. Across the room, other children were being kicked and poked away by the cruel-looking blonde girl who had given the orders to her the day before. Ouch! Margret cried. The curly-haired boy had pinched her on the arm. What are you staring at? Move faster when you get an order, he said. Yeah. Margret hurried to straighten her flimsy sheets, and the boy stomped off to the next bed. The first few days are always the worst, said a hushed voice, and Margret saw the wide-eyed mousy girl who had if you think this is bad, it gets a lot worse. But it gets better. It does. But, like, the reason why I wanted to become an orphanage matron was so I could be like Hannah and not Miss Switch. To give those who had no place to go an actually good life, and nothing like the events in this book. Margret was full of questions, but before she could whisper any of them to the mousy girl, a screeching voice filled the room. You worthless little runtworm! The bossy blonde girl was snarling at a tiny boy who was struggling to lift a large laundry basket. You're the most useless snizzler I've ever seen, spat the girl. Grabbing the basket from the tiny boy's hands and lifting it high in the air, she tipped it over his head. Rolls of grimy socks tumbled out in a wave until the boy was buried in a smelly pyramid. Then the girl dropped the basket so it landed with a thump on top of the heap. She threw her head back and laughed loudly. The curly-haired boy snickered. That's Lacey Walloper, the mousy girl whispered. One of Switch's pets, and the other's Christopher Thrashley. You'll have to watch out for them. My name's Judy. Just follow me and do what I do. Turning to a hamper of dirty towels, Judy grabbed hold of one side and Margret took the other. Judy, Margret whispered as they made their way out of the room. What happened yesterday? What's up, buddy? The Switch, said Judy. That's what we call her when she's not around. She gets charity money from those ladies for the orphanage, but she only uses it on herself. She has to make everything look good when they come to visit, but they always telephone beforehand, so she has time to put out all the nice things. Couldn't you tell someone? Margret asked. Couldn't you call the police? Judy shook her head sadly. Some kids have tried, but no one believes them. And the switch can make things really terrible for anyone who gets in her way. Judy lowered her voice. Once, Phoebe Frizzleton forgot to smile when the CLC ladies asked how she was. Switch made her stand in the middle of a field during a lightning storm. Phoebe couldn't sleep for weeks after that. It's best just to keep your head down and try not to get noticed. Margret and Judy filed down the hallway behind the other pairs of orphans and their hampers. Then, one by one, they emptied their loads down an enormous laundry chute. Turning away from the chute, Margret noticed a new group of children who had come up from a neighboring room to join Lacey and Christopher. They were laughing with each other, and many had smug looks on their faces. Judy nudged her. The rest of the pets, she whispered. What's a pet? Margret asked. Just at that moment, Lacey came stalking down the line, so Judy didn't get a chance to tell her. But as that dreadful day progressed, Margret learned the answer for herself. Miss Switch, it soon became clear, divided the orphans into two groups. The ones she found to be cute and adorable she called pets, while all others were dregs. The pets were Miss Switch's personal favorites, and it was their job to keep the dregs in line. It was also their job to brush the matron's hair, paint her toenails, or simply follow her around and admire her. She would usually say things like, "My hair is less shiny today than usual," to which the pets would respond, "Oh no, Miss Switch, you have the loveliest hair in the world," and so on. In return, she treated them a great deal better than the less attractive orphans, who were forced to chop and cook and scrub and scrape and wash and weed all day long. Margret, as you already know, had become a dreg, which meant her life was now full of just such scrubbing and scraping and washing and weeding. She had begun what is called a life of drudgery, which is a most unpleasant kind of life to have. On Margaret's second day in the orphanage, Miss Switch ordered her to chop onions into perfect square-shaped pieces for her egg white omelet. By the time Margret finished, her eyes were stinging and watering so much she had dropped her bowl of breakfast mush on the floor and had nothing to eat at all. On Margaret's third day, Miss Switch had put her on porch scrubbing duty with a pimply-faced dreg called Bessie Blotchley. Margaret's hands got so sore from the scrubbing brush that painful blisters blossomed across her palms, and when she asked for permission to stop, Lacey gave her a row of hard pinches on her arm. A day after that, Miss Switch discovered that a nervous dreg called Vikram Skitter had accidentally thrown away her new fashion magazines. As punishment, she threw him down the laundry chute with a rope tied around his waist, where he spent afternoon whimpering quietly until Margret and the others were allowed to haul him up again. On the fifth day, Miss Switch commanded Margret and the very smallest dreg, a puny boy called Timothy Smealing, to climb up the chimney and scrape it out with toothbrushes. They got soot so far up their ears and noses that they couldn't hear or smell anything for the rest of the day, and Miss Switch sent them to bed without supper for having dirty fingernails. As it happened, a young couple came to the orphanage that evening looking to adopt an orphan, but Margret, lying in her bed with soot-filled ears and an empty stomach, didn't even get to lay eyes on them, and they took home a fetching black-haired pet named Charlotte Ravenhurst. As young as she was, Margret had already faced a great number of unpleasant things. She had accepted her life in silence with Cousin Amos. She had endured Great Aunt Linda's bossiness. She had minded her manners and tried to make the best of things, and she had always obeyed the rules because that is what she had been taught to do. But Margret could see that Miss Switch was an entirely different kind of awful. Miss Switch wasn't going to guard her, or care for her, or help her in any way. For the first time, Margret had fallen under the thumb of a truly cruel person. Dealing with cruelty is a pretty tall order, even for grown-ups, but Margret remembered what Hannah had whispered before driving away. Call if you need anything. Margret certainly needed something now. So, unused to boldness though she was, she concocted a very bold plan, and as she went about her chores, she waited patiently for a chance to act on it. Chapter 8. The Truth About Bullies. Bullies, whether big or small, are really very much alike. No matter how much they poke or pinch or tease, they never seem satisfied, which is a pity for whoever is being poked and pinched. The truth about bullies is that every one of them has a sore spot that pokes and pinches at them, like a bad stomachache or a pesky thorn stuck in their side. The sore spot might even be caused by loneliness, or jealousy, or even fear, but every single bully has one, and it never goes away no matter how much bullying they do. Miss Switch, who was one of the biggest bullies of them all, was no different. Though she brought orphan after terrified orphan to the brink of despair, she never seemed satisfied, and the sore spot never went away, for the thorn sticking in Miss Switch's side was beauty. Though anyone would say that the matron was beautiful now, she knew she had once been much more than that. Not so many years ago, she had been breathtaking, the type of person you would stop and stare at if you saw her walking down the street. One day, when she was quite young, two people had stopped to stare at who were very important indeed. "Rolf, do you see that girl?" said one of them, a woman in dark sunglasses and tall spiky heels. "Oh my, yes," said Rolf, who wore a long ponytail. "Darling!" "Excusez-moi," said the woman, waving a silk handkerchief at Miss Switch. "Mademoiselle, a moment." They swooped down on the young Miss Switch like hungry bees on a flower. "Have you ever posed for a portrait?" asked the woman. "Darling, what a face!" cried Rolf. Young Miss Switch, who was unused to this sort of attention, had a feeling that wonderful new life was about to start for her. As it turned out, the spiky-heeled woman was called Esta Isabella, and she owned a very successful fashion magazine. Rolf, who had no last name, was a world-famous photographer. They both found Miss Switch to be so lovely that from that point on, her only job was to sit for portraits. In the grand scheme of things, sitting for portraits is neither a useful nor an interesting job, but Miss Switch didn't mind. She made a large group of stylish new friends and bought all the best clothing and jewelry to adorn herself with. Each day seemed better and more glamorous than the last, and she truly believed that she could be very happily spend the rest of her life in the world of fashion. In that world, you see, people with beautiful faces have a lot of control over those around them. And Miss Switch, with the most beautiful face of all, controlled a great many people. She controlled the man who painted on her makeup and the seamstresses who hemmed her gowns. She controlled the girl who brought her lunch and the woman who cleaned her dressing room. If she didn't like the way things were done, she could pout and hold up everyone's day until she got her way. Her portraits were so important to everyone that no one dared refuse her anything. Good night, Dan. I hope you have a good day at work. Thank you for joining. I hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye, Dan. But one thing Switch couldn't control was time. Years passed, and her shiny hair became the tiniest bit duller. Her skin became just a smidgen less glowing. And one fateful day, just as Switch was about to have her portrait taken with an enormous peacock, the makeup man screamed and dropped his brush. "What is it?" Miss Switch said in alarm, for he looked as though he'd seen something really dreadful. "Nothing to worry about," said the man. "I'll just need some more powder." But when Miss Switch checked her reflection in the mirror, she saw what had made the makeup man scream. Right in the middle of her smooth forehead was a tiny wrinkle. That was the last photograph ever taken of Miss Switch. Rolf stopped asking for her portraits, and Estella wouldn't return her phone calls. Switch lingered near fashionable shops and restaurants in the hopes of bumping into them. But all the waiters and shopkeepers who had once been happy to see her now seemed to turn their heads away. At last she spotted the pair of them at a sidewalk cafe, sitting next to a tall, willowy girl with black hair. "Rolf!" Switch cried. "Estella!" But neither of them showed any interest at all. "What do you want?" asked Estella. "You haven't been returning my messages," Switch said. "Darling," said Rolf, "you're out." "What?" said Switch. "What do you mean?" "You're finished," Rolf said. "Kaput. Zippo. No one wants you." Although this was an awful thing for Rolf to say, and Miss Switch felt as though she'd been struck by lightning, she turned hopefully to Estella. "Couldn't I at least work at your magazine?" she asked. "Why would we want you?" Estella said, sticking up her nose. When there are so many other girls out there who are much more beautiful, so much younger. No, I don't see that we will have any use for you. Then, Switch said quietly, what am I to do? I am afraid you will have to go and join the dregs of society, said Estella with a cold smile. Then she turned back to the willowy girl beside her. Now, if you will excuse us, we were getting to know more about Chi-Chi here. You're going to be a star, darling, Ralph said to the willowy girl, already ignoring the devastated Miss Switch. From that moment on, it was as if a door had closed on Miss Switch, and she was never allowed back through. Her fancy friends would no longer speak to her. She couldn't afford the extravagant clothes and jewels she had grown used to. Every part of the world she had loved quickly slipped away. The only thing from her old life had given her was a lot of practice at ordering people around. Which is why, when she read about the retirement of the master of Hopeton Orphanage in the newspaper, she replied to replace him. I think this job will be just right for you, said the cheerful young woman named Hannah Tender as she drove Miss Switch to the orphanage. I'm sure you'll liven the place right up. But Miss Switch soon found that the job was not right for her. With every passing day, she grew more bitter, and her heart grew colder. Every time she noticed a new wrinkle on her creamy skin, she felt fury bubble up inside her like a smoldering volcano. And the children, who seemed to her a constant reminder of her own lost youth, were what she hated most of all. By the time Margret arrived at the orphanage, wide-eyed and hopeful, it seemed to Switch as though every child was a pin stuck in her side, poking and pricking and needling at her by their very presence. It was only when she crushed the spirit right out of the children that she felt a moment's ease. But no matter how terrible Switch made life at the orphanage, it was never terrible enough. Chapter 9. Teaspoons and Treachery. If who takes in what girl? Gotta have a bite of my dinner and a little bit more water. Then I'll get back to reading. I mean, it's somewhere between dinner and breakfast. 4 a.m. If Switch takes in Margret? Well, we'll just have to see, won't we? Chapter 9. Teaspoons and Treachery. At the end of Margaret's first week, Miss Switch ordered her to polish all the silverware in the scullery, which was a small room behind the kitchen. The pet assigned to guard her was a girl called Agatha Spink. Agatha had shining dark hair that fell almost to her waist, a rather bulbous nose, and, as it happened, a very short attention span. This turned out to be a lucky thing for Margret, because the only thing duller than polishing silverware was keeping watch over someone else who was polishing silverware. As Margret polished the teaspoons, Agatha sighed and tapped her foot. As Margret polished the dessert forks, Agatha rapped her fingers on the scullery door. As the hours passed, Agatha twitched and fidgeted and wriggled and squirmed. Excuse me. Listen, Dreg, she said at last. Don't even think of doing anything funny. If you're not finished by the time I get back, I'll put pepper in your mush for a week. That sounds like an upgrade. Yes, Agatha, Margaret said, giving her a fearful, obedient look. Agatha narrowed her eyes like a rat, then stepped aside and let the scullery door swing shut with Margaret inside. As soon as she was gone, Margaret dropped to the ground. Through the crack under the door, she saw the dark-haired pet disappearing into the pantry where all the cookies and treats were kept. And in that moment, Margaret knew her chance had come. For the first time since arriving at the orphanage, she knew that no one was watching her. For the first time, she was alone. Sneaking around in places you don't belong is called trespassing, and it is usually a very rude thing to do. Imagine, for example, jumping into your bed one night and finding a strange banker tucked up under the covers. Not only would you have to discuss economics as you shooed the banker outside, but you would probably find that he arranged your pillows in exactly the wrong way. No one enjoys having a stranger puttering about uninvited, which is why trespassing is such an impolite habit. But after a week at the Hopton orphanage, Margaret knew that a stint of impoliteness would be the least of her problems. As quietly as she could, Margaret pushed the scullery door open and slipped through it. She listened to Agatha munching away on cookies for a few seconds, then tiptoed out of the kitchen and into the hallway. Along with Switch's bedroom, her sitting room, and her private bathroom, Switch's study was right up there with the den of hungry lions. Can't read. Was right up there with the den of a hungry lion as one of the worst places to go on Earth to go trespassing. I don't know how to read that line. But this was just where Margaret was headed. Because even though the study was off limits, it had one thing she needed more than anything. A telephone. The matron's study was at the far end of the hallway, and when Margaret reached for the door, she put an ear against the keyhole to see if any pets were inside. There wasn't a peep, so she turned the handle and crept through the door. The room inside was a cozy one, lined with bookshelves and marble sculptures of famous people's heads. The first master of Hopton had stacked the shelves with leather-bound books, but Switch had filled them with her enormous collection of glossy fashion magazines instead. Ignoring both the magazines and the marble heads, Margaret made straight for the telephone on the wide oak desk. With shaking hands, she picked up the receiver and dialed. "Operator," said a nasally voice at the other end of the line. "Concerned Ladies Club, please," breathed Margaret, afraid to speak too loudly. "Thank you," said the operator. There was 3 beeps on the end of the line, then silence. "Hello?" said a sweet voice at last, and Margaret felt a surge of hope. It was Hannah. "Hannah, it's Margaret. Do you remember me?" "Of course I remember you, Margaret. What's wrong?" "Please, come quickly and bring the police," Margaret whispered. "It's all a fraud. All the furniture and the food and the clothes, Miss Switch put it all away as soon as you left. She uses the money for herself. We aren't looked after for it all, and we're working all day long and—" "What?" interrupted Margaret. "Margaret, is this true?" "Yes. Oh, Hannah, please come. I'll be there as fast as I can." "Oh, thank you, Margaret froze. For a moment, as though she had heard a small noise from outside the study door. "I have to go," she said in a rush, and hung up the phone. Trembling, she crossed back to the door and peered through the keyhole. There was no one there. Weak with relief, Margaret slipped down to the scullery, and there she sat, polishing away at the soup spoons. Wonderful thoughts began swimming through her mind. Soon, Hannah would come to the rescue, and all the orphans would be freed from their lives of drudgery, and best of all, they would never have to lay eyes on Miss Switch again. All this would no doubt have happened, had it not been for one thing that poor Margaret knew nothing about. Chapter 10. The Dreggish Pet. As you know, the matron of Hopton Orphanage had a habit of dividing her orphans into 2 groups based on their looks. What you may not know is that she always acted on first impressions. That meant if you arrived at the orphanage with messy hair and dark circle under your eyes from traveling, Miss Switch would sneer and shove a broom into your hands. It didn't matter if days or years afterwards you became a great beauty. Once a dreg, always a dreg, was Miss Switch's favorite saying. I mean, it is a relatively short book. We're already about halfway through it. It is a kid's book, after all. The girl named Agatha Spink had arrived on the orphanage only had arrived on the orphanage steps only a few weeks before Margret, and that happened to be a beautiful and sunny afternoon. The first time Miss Switch laid eyes on the new arrival, warm sunlight was bouncing off her lovely dark hair, so the matron's first impression was one of shining raven locks that tumbled over the girl's shoulders in a very becoming way. Naturally, Switch smiled and offered her a strawberry tart. It was not till the following morning that Miss Switch got a good look at the girl's large and bulbous nose. "Who are you?" Switch snapped when Agatha brought in a jug of cucumber water. "I'm Agatha Spink," Agatha replied, suddenly nervous. Miss Switch stared at the girl in confusion. Then her look changed into one of disgust, and Agatha felt her knees buckle. Disgust was a look that matron only gave to dregs. "Go," Switch said, snatching the jug from her hands. "Send someone else in to help me dress. Send in one of the others." As she scurried off from the room, Agatha realized the mistake that had been made. She oughtn't to have been made a pet at all. From that moment on, Agatha wasn't allowed in the matron's private rooms. But neither could Switch assign her to chores. The matron's decisions in these matters were always final, and to admit she had made a mistake would be unthinkable. Instead, Agatha was given the least desirable of the pet's tasks. "Miss Switch really ought to just boot her out," Agatha overheard Lacey telling the other pets one day. She can't stand the sight of her. She's so dreggish. I'm telling you, one of these days when we'll wake up and that big schnoz will be gone. Miss Switch will see to that." Agatha tried her very best every day to get back on Miss Switch's good side, but this only seemed to make the matron more annoyed. As time went on, Agatha grew more and more certain that her days in the orphanage were numbered. On the day of the silverware polishing, as she stood in the scullery watching Margret shining spoon after spoon, these were the thoughts going around in Agatha's head. What was the point, she asked herself, of doing what she was told, if she was going to be booted out no matter how hard she tried? She might as well enjoy herself while she still had a place to sleep at night. Having reached this conclusion, she left Margret in the silverware, dashed over to the pantry, and began stuffing her mouth with cookies. Desperate people, you see, will often try to distract themselves from their worries. Some of the dregs threw themselves into their chores until they could no longer think clearly. Others tried to convince themselves that they were in the middle of a long and unpleasant dream from which they would soon wake up. Unfortunately, neither of these strategies could keep their troubles at bay for long, and as satisfying as it was to stuff her mouth with sugary treats, Agatha's method was no better. After a few minutes in the pantry, Agatha's stomach was pleasantly full and her worries were as real as ever. Wiping the crumbs from her mouth, she shuffled back to the scullery to check on Margret. And you already know what she discovered. The polishing had been abandoned, and the little brown-haired dreg had disappeared. Agatha's knees began to shake. Pet or not, a slip-up like this would be the last straw for her. Which is why, in a sudden panic, she took off down the hall to search for the missing girl. Which is also why, when she overheard the dreg's phone call to the very same keyhole Margret peered through only moments before, she ran immediately to Miss Switch and told her every word of it. Surely, thought Agatha, warning Miss Switch of such a plot would bring her back into the matron's good graces. And when Miss Switch, who hated the very sight of the big-nosed child gasping in her doorway, heard of what the girl had to say, she smiled a very sinister smile indeed. Chapter 11. Nothing Worse Than a Thief. Margret had been polishing for what felt like a very long time. She was just beginning to wonder how much longer the raven-haired pet would stay in the pantry before she heard the sounds of the approaching footsteps. She started polishing a little faster, just in case the pet was in a scolding mood, but it wasn't Agatha who pulled open the door. It was Miss Switch, wearing a turquoise satin dressing gown. The matron stared down at Margret with a look of pure sweetness, her golden hair shining. "It's Margret, isn't it?" she said, and her voice reminded Margret of a purring cat. "Yes, Miss Switch," said Margret, who was beginning to have a very bad feeling in the pit of her stomach. "My," purred Miss Switch, "what a nice job you've done on the polishing." "Thank you," said Margret. "Why don't you take a little break?" Stepping to one side, Miss Switch swept her arm in a wide gesture to the kitchen, and Margret, not knowing what else to do, slowly stepped forward. Glancing around, she saw that Lacey was standing near the hallway door, smiling a hyena-like smile that made Margret feel more like a lamb chop than a little girl. "Perhaps," Miss Switch said softly, "you wouldn't mind helping Lacey fetch my silk scarf from upstairs? I have a bit of a chill." Margret frowned slightly, certain the matron would never ask a dreg to perform such a personal task. But she took a deep breath and said, "No, I wouldn't mind." "Marvelous," said Miss Switch. "Follow me," said Lacey. Margret followed her up the stairs, and when they reached the top, Lacey led the way to a large closet and pulled open the door. "It's in here," Lacey said. "Near the back. Go on." Margret hesitated. She knew that there was a good chance Lacey was up to something, and a very good chance it was cruel. But she also knew that help couldn't be far away, and that she only needed to play along until it arrived. So, with a nod, she stepped into the closet. Not surprisingly, the door slammed shut behind her and locked with a click. But what was surprising was the sound that echoed through the house only seconds later. Tweet! The whistle. "No!" Margret cried and banged on the closet door. Now she knew what was happening, the only possible thing that could ruin her hopes of rescue. Miss Switch had ordered the switch once again. Even now, the orphans were covering the house in fine things and changing into their colorful overalls and hiding the evidence of Miss Switch's treachery. "Stop!" cried Margret. "Don't do it!" But it was no use. Soon the commotion had stopped, and Margret knew that the truth had been hidden once again. A few minutes passed, and she heard the sounds of a car approaching and a hard knock on the front door. "Good evening, Miss Switch." A man's voice drifted up from the entryway. "Sheriff, how nice to see you," came Miss Switch's voice at its most charming. "I do hope all is well. Hello, ladies." "I'm dreadfully sorry about the disturbance," came Gertrude's sharp voice, sounding annoyed. "This is completely against procedure." "Yes, indeed," said Prudy's voice. "We never visit without calling ahead. It's impolite." But when Hannah spoke, Margret felt a surge of hope. "I'm afraid I've just had a telephone call from one of your children," Hannah said. "She told me some very disturbing things about the way you run things here." Hannah's voice trailed off. Margret knew she was looking around at all the beautiful things that Margret had insisted wouldn't be there. "How very odd," said Miss Switch. "Everything looks fine to me," said the sheriff. "And me," said Gertrude. "Yes," said Hannah. "But where's Margret? I'd like to speak with her." "By all means. Margret!" Miss Switch called in a sing-song voice. On cue, the key turned in the lock and Lacey pulled Margret from the closet. She shoved her towards the stairs with a smirk. Worrying about possible punishment as you climb up a flight of stairs is an unpleasant feeling. Knowing that your doom awaits you at the bottom of one is even worse. But Margret had no choice. As she came down the stairs, she saw the floorboards were now richly carpeted. She saw the orphans in their bright clothes and Miss Switch in a faded gingham dress. She saw the remains of a delicious-looking lunch spread out on the table. She saw Hannah's kind face, looking confused, and the concerned ladies, looking miffed, and a mustachioed man in uniform who must have been the sheriff. "Oh," said Miss Switch. "What were you doing up there, Margret? I did your painting frock. I thought you'd be playing in the yard with the others." "Yes," said Gertrude. "From noon until 1:30 the children play outdoors. It's in the schedule." Margret turned to Hannah and opened her mouth to explain, but before she could get a single word out, "Miss Switch!" Lacey bellowed from the top of the stairs. "Margret has been stealing from you!" At these words, 5 gasps sounded. 4 genuine ones from the ladies and the sheriff, and a theatrical one from Miss Switch. Lacey rushed downstairs and handed something to the matron. "I found this in that ratty bag under her bed." "I can't believe it!" As though she were on stage, Miss Switch held up a beautiful pearl necklace. "This is a treasured family heirloom." "Well, it certainly doesn't belong under a child's bed, then," said Prudy. "Jewelry belongs in a jewelry case." "Marjorie must have taken it," cried Gertrude. "It's the only logical explanation. There's nothing worse than a thief," said the sheriff, looking stern. Hannah looked at Margret very closely, a mixture of surprise and confusion on her face. "I don't understand," she said. "Margret, did you do this?" Margret shook her head frantically, then opened her mouth to defend herself. "Margret, how could you?" Miss Switch cut in loudly. bringing her hand to her forehead and turning back to the group. Hannah was staring at Miss Switch now, with a slight frown on her face. "I'm so sorry you had to see the sheriff," Miss Switch went on. "I'm afraid the child must be starved for attention to be acting out like this. It's a matter of a mother's gentle touch, not the firm hand of the law." "Well, all right," said the sheriff. "I must say you're very forgiving about the whole thing. And you," he added sternly, turning to Margaret. "If I hear you're giving Miss Switch any more trouble, I tell you I won't be nearly so understanding." "Nor will we," said Prudy, her plump face pink with annoyance. "Please accept our apologies, Miss Switch," said Gertrude. "If we'd known this child had criminal tendencies, we would have sent her straight to the loony bin." "You could always tell the bad ones," said Prudy, "because they're less adorable than the others. That is something I know to be absolutely true." "It's not," Margaret finally managed to say, but no one was listening. Already Switch was ushering them all out to the porch and down the front steps. Only Hannah turned to look back before she climbed into the police car with the others, and they set off down the dirt road. Margaret looked wildly around at the other orphans, but none of them would even look at her. It was over. Margaret had failed. And Switch, the horrible, beautiful Switch, had most definitely won. Part 2. The Moths. Chapter 12. The Dreg Who Didn't Exist. When the mousy girl called Judy told Margaret to keep her head down and try not to get noticed, it was for a very good reason. Drawing attention to yourself when Miss Switch was around, whether through a tiny hint of cheekiness or a grand act of rebellion, meant you were in for a punishment. "So," said Switch in her purring tone when she returned from the porch, "you like to blab, do you? You like to chit-chat with policemen?" Her glittering eyes pierced Margaret's, and the corners of her mouth turned slowly up. "Well, blabby dregs must learn to shut their mouths." She turned to the other orphans. "Those are the last words anyone is to speak to this dreg," she said coolly. "And if any of you so much as whisper to her, I'll tape your mouth shut for a month." "Yes, Miss Switch," said the orphans. "And you," she turned to Margaret, had best not make another sound for the rest of your pitiful life, or I'll feed you to a pack of coyotes." Miss Switch unplugged the telephone and locked it away in her bedroom, and from that day on, the others acted as if Margaret wasn't there. She was made to do her chores completely on her own. Instead of screaming their orders at her in the usual way, the pets would silently swat her on the head, shove a rag or broom at her, and point in the direction she was to go. Her bed was moved out of the dregs room and into the hallway, where it caught a very chilly draft. And at mealtimes her food was put out on the porch, where she had to sit and eat all alone. Through it all, no one spoke a single word to her, not even Judy. To add injury to insult, the pets gave her extra pinches to make up for their usual name-calling. It is a very unpleasant thing, being treated like you don't exist. A person with a weaker disposition than Margaret might think that they'd turn invisible without noticing, and they would have to check the mirror every 5 minutes to make sure they were still there. Margaret, though, kept her wits about her. No matter how much she was pinched or poked or prodded, she was careful never to make the slightest peep. In fact, after going a full day without saying a word to anyone, she was beginning to think she could bear her punishment quite well. On Margaret's second day of silence, however, word went around that the Hopton orphanage was to receive 2 very special visitors. Parents. The arrival of potential parents at the orphanage was always a momentous occasion, because the thought of parents awakened a flutter of hope in every orphan. Unfortunately for the dregs, this hope was short-lived. Every time a new couple came calling, Miss Switch would arrange the orphans in neat rows at the front hall, placing all of her most charming pets in the very front. That way, they were the first ones the visitors saw when they stepped into the room. She would coach the pets on how to smile in the most adorable way, to give proper bows and curtsies. Then, at the back of the room, she would arrange the dregs. "They'd have to be dotty to look at any of you," Switch would say with a glare. "But if they do, don't even think about saying something stupid. I can promise you that you'll regret it later." On this particular day, the orphans stood in their rows wearing their red and blue coveralls. Margaret was tucked away in the very furthest corner of the room, behind lanky Phoebe Frizzleton, whose poofy hair was blocking Margaret's face. At the sound of a car engine came drifting through the window. Miss Switch appeared in a plain brown dress and frilly white apron, and made one final inspection of the pets in the front row. Peering around Phoebe's shoulder, Margaret could see the curly-haired boy called Christopher Thrashley standing front and center, with Lacey at his side. Switch disappeared from the room. A few moments later, she returned with a sweet-looking woman in a polka-dot dress and a man with a neat mustache. "These are the orphans," Miss Switch said with a sweep of her arm, and she led the couple before the waiting children. "Oh!" cried the woman, whose eyes immediately fell on Christopher Thrashley. "Indeed," said the man, who looked as though he thought this fact was rather obvious. "Please, take your time," said Miss Switch, "and feel free to ask me any questions. I have the personal histories for each child available should you wish to read them." The couple waited slowly along the first row of children before the sweet-faced woman came to a stop in front of Christopher. "Hello, dear," she said. "What's your name?" "I'm Christopher," he said, with a charming little bow. "It's very lovely to meet you." The woman beamed with delight and cast a quick glance at her husband, who nodded approvingly. Beneath their smiles, the other orphans breathed a sigh of disappointment. But just at that moment, an unexpected thing happened. Phoebe Frizzleton's poofy hair, which had been hanging down in front of Margaret's face, tickled her nose in precisely the wrong way, and Margaret gave a very loud, very high-pitched sneeze. Every face in the room, including those of the man and woman, turned to look at Margaret, who clapped both of her hands over her mouth. "Bless you, child," said the woman, sweetly. "Martin, your hanky." The man pulled a white handkerchief from his jacket pocket and edged between the rows of children to offer it to Margaret. "Here you are, little girl." With a small curtsy, Margaret took it. "And what might your name be?" asked the man. Margaret opened her mouth to answer, but just at that moment she caught a glimpse of Miss Switch. The matron was standing behind the man and woman, just out of sight so that neither of them could see her, and her face was wearing an expression so frightening that even Margaret didn't dare utter a single sound. She froze, looking up at the friendly man with her mouth half open, and pressed her lips tightly together and dropped her eyes to the floor. "That child," Miss Switch said in a mock whisper, the sweetness in her face restored, "has a history of loopiness, I'm afraid. Runs in the family. It's best not to upset her." "Oh," said the man, staring at Margaret in shock and then backing away quickly. "Well, what about this one, Miss Switch?" asked the woman, pointing back to Christopher Thrashley. Miss Switch smiled. "Christopher is one of our most popular and well-behaved children. You won't find a more adorable child anywhere, I assure you." At a final nod from the friendly man, the sweet-faced woman smiled with delight. "We'll take him." "It's like they're buying a dog," she said, but Margaret barely heard what happened next. As Christopher whooped and ran into the arms of his new parents, all Margaret could hear were the words she wished she could have said to the friendly man and woman. "My name is Margaret Gray," she would have said. "I'm not loopy. It's just that I can't make a sound or I'll be fed to the coyotes, so please take me far away from here." But of course, the man and woman couldn't read minds. The papers were signed, and as the new family said their goodbyes and climbed into their car and drove away down the dirt road, Margaret stared intently downwards, her eyes blurry with tears. I read this when I was Margaret's age. The other one that hit me just as hard as this one, because I was also the same age as the main character, was a book called Making Bombs for Hitler, which I also had to read, I think, a year later.
Emotional damage!
Chapter 13, Serendipity. Margaret's great-aunt Linda had often said, "If life gives you lemons, make lemonade," which is her way of saying you should try to make the best of a bad situation. However, a far more useful saying would be, if life gives you lemons, water, sugar, a pitcher, and a long spoon to stir with, make lemonade. Everyone knows that if life gives you lemons alone, it is just bad luck, and the most you can do is try to trade them for something better. But if life gives you lemons and you are already in the possession of water, sugar, pitcher, and a long spoon to stir with, that is something else entirely. That is serendipity. Margaret, my cat, just let out the biggest yawn. He's so strange. I love him. Margaret Gray, I keep saying it. Margaret Gray had lived in silence once before, and just because she had lived in silence once, her new punishment, though she didn't realize it yet, was a stroke of serendipity. Even though she was very lonesome without anyone to speak to, and even though her arms became bruised and sore from all the pinches, Margaret found that the quiet was strangely familiar. As day after day went by without even a hint of conversation, she began to notice a very odd thing. The first time it happened, she was dusting the kitchen rafters from atop a teetering ladder. As she swept her duster across a cobweb beam, sending a great cloud of dust into the air, and she heard, "Achoo!" Margaret nearly fell off her ladder, because for a split second she thought she'd heard a sneeze coming from a spider's web. That's ridiculous, she told herself, giving her head a shake. No one can hear a spider sneeze. But a few days later, it happened again. She was sweeping under the table, cleaning up after Miss Switch's afternoon feast, when from somewhere in the walls, rumble. Margaret bumped her head on the underside of the table. She could have sworn she heard the growl of a tiny mousy stomach. That's absurd, she reminded herself, rubbing her sore head. No one can hear a mouse's hungry belly. But with every passing day, it happened more and more. She'd be scrubbing the front steps and hear a crow landing on the roof. She would be cleaning the pet's bedroom upstairs and hear two dregs whispering all the way down in the basement. Margaret knew these events were absurd, and she knew they were ridiculous. And even that, she knew that, in a sensible world, they simply couldn't be. But just because something is absurd or ridiculous doesn't stop it from being true. And as the very smallest of sounds continued to trickle in, she realized what was happening. Yeah. She was hearing things that no one else could hear. Without even noticing she was doing it, Margaret had started to listen again. You see, there are some talents that can never truly be lost. They are only hiding, like a sleeping turtle in its shell, waiting to be coaxed out and used again. As Margaret went mutely about her tasks, she soon discovered something else. She could control her talent. When she focused all her attention on her ears, she felt them open to the faintest and tiniest hints of sounds. At first, it was only by closing her eyes and holding very still that she was able to do it perfectly. But late one night, when everyone else was asleep, she practiced, and soon, even with her eyes open or her hands busy at chores, she could focus on her ears as easily as anything. And the more she focused, the more she heard. One night, as dusk was falling, Margaret was kneeling in the vegetable patch in the yard behind the orphanage. But rather than feeling lonesome and sad as she yanked spiky weeds from the rows of tomato plants, she was focusing on her attention on her ears. A hummingbird hovered nearby, and she heard each whir of its tiny wings. A mole crawled by under the ground, and she heard its little puff of air in and out. A breeze blew across a clump of dandelions, and she heard each fluffy weed break off and float away in the wind. "Wake up!" cried a very small voice. Margaret looked up in surprise, wondering who had spoken, but no one was there. "Come on, Pip, or we'll start without you!" cried the voice. Margaret got to her feet and whirled around. At the back of the vegetable patch there was a trellis fence grown over with snap peas. It was from this direction that the voice had come. There was nothing behind the trellis, Margaret knew. Only a stretch of overgrown grass and a row of bushes that marked the end of the orphanage grounds. Unlike the front of the property, which was kept neatly trimmed and pruned to impress visitors, this part of the yard wasn't tended at all, since no one ever bothered to go there. Margaret peered through a gap in the trellis. Sure enough, there wasn't a soul in sight. "I'm coming!" called a new, tiny voice. "Hello?" cried Margaret. The voice sounded as though it must be right in front of her. "Who's there?" But in that moment, Margaret had lost her focus, and her ears had closed up again as though someone had snapped a pair of earmuffs over them. Listening as she might, she didn't hear the mysterious voices again. Chapter 14. The Thorny Brush. Later that night, after Margaret had finished her chores and collapsed in her chilly bed in the hallway, she could think of nothing but the two strange voices. The only people who could hear voices from nowhere, she had been brought up to believe. were people who'd gone a bit dotty in the head. But Margret didn't feel any more dotty than usual, and as she lay there, tossing and turning in the cold, she had realized something. Quite accidentally, Miss Switch had given her an opportunity. Now that her bed was separate from the others, there was no one around to see her come and go. There was no creaking bedroom door to alert the pets, and there was no reason she could think of not to return to the yard to seek out the voices once again. As everyone else lay sleeping, Margret threw off her covers and laced up her shoes. She tiptoed from her bed and crept down the hallway, past the pet's door and down the stairs. She crept through the kitchen very quietly, let herself out through the back door. Then she waited, wondering if anyone would come chasing after her to snatch her back inside. When no one did, she ran out into the moonlit yard. Margret ran through the garden, past patches of carrots and turnips, all the way to the trellis fence with the trailing pea vines. This time, she went around it. When she came to the other side, she felt her heart beat a little faster. She was standing on the overgrown lawn on the other side of the trellis. Before her, a cool wind was blowing through the tall grass, and at the far end of the lawn, a tangle of bushes rose up in the shadow. "Hello?" she called, walking slowly forward. All she could hear was the wind and the grass. The bushes were gray in the moonlight, twisting and thorny and rather frightening. They hadn't been left to grow wild for so long they had joined together into a brush, too thick to see through and too tall to see over, with sharp branches that swayed in the wind as if clawing at the air. Margret came to the center of the lawn and stopped. She shivered, gazing up at the looming brush, then closed her eyes to calm her nerves. It was then, with the grass swaying, tickling her legs and the wind rustling her hair, that she heard the strange voices for the second time. "Is it still there?" said a small voice. "What is it doing?" "It's just standing around," said another. Margret snapped her eyes open. Just as before, there was no one in sight, but she was sure this time the voices had come from the enormous bush. She took a step closer. As she did, she saw in the bottom branches at the very center of the tangled brush there was a gap. The gap wasn't very large or very noticeable, but when she crouched down, she saw that it was just big enough for a raccoon or a fox, or perhaps a very small girl. She pushed aside one thorny branch, then another, then soon the gap had widened enough for her to squeeze through it. Slowly, Margret reached her hand inside. Her hand followed shortly after her wrist, then her elbow, then her shoulder, and finally her head. Carefully clearing the way through the brush, Margret crawled deeper in. Then, quite suddenly, the branches gave way to an open space, and Margret looked up with a gasp. The dense brush had been hiding something. At the heart of the bushes was a tree. The tree had a wrinkly, moss-covered trunk and a thick velvet net of intertwined branches that fell away down to the ground. Margret blinked several times, getting used to the dimness, and saw that she was in some sort of hollow that had formed between the branches and the trunk. When she breathed it in, she inhaled a rich, mossy smell. It was so lovely that she forgot to be puzzled. She forgot all about being dotty in the head, gazing round at the beautiful hidden chamber in the tree. Margret listened. She heard the call of a distant bird and the soft breathing of sleeping children in the orphanage. She had heard the parting of two clouds far overhead, and the dust blowing out on the road. "Stay very still, Pipperflit," said a small voice. "Maybe it'll leave." "No, Pip, fly away," said another tiny voice. "It looks like a gobbler." Margret looked down and saw a small, shadowy creature sitting on a low branch near her right hand. It was a moth. Chapter 15. The Moth Tree. "What's it doing, do you think?" said the moth. "Maybe it's lost," said the first voice. "Maybe it's sleepwalking," said the second. Margret thought about this, but when she rubbed her eyes and gave her arm a good pinch, she seemed to be very much awake. She bent down to get a closer look at the moth, and the moth flattened its wings against the tree branch and held perfectly still. For several moments, neither of them moved. "Do you think," the moth said at last, "do you think maybe it's listening to us?" "Of course I am," Margret said. The moth gave a shout of surprise, fluttering into the air. "Quick, Pip!" cried the second voice from up above. "It's probably planning to gobble you up." "No, I'm not," said Margret. Get away from it, Pip, said the first voice. If we leave it alone, it'll have to go away. But the moth called Pip had landed on the tree trunk just above Margaret's head and was looking down at her, curiously. I don't know, said the moth. Doesn't look so bad to me. Why don't we try talking to it? We can't do that. I'm not going to hurt you, cried Margret. You keep away from him, cried the first voice. See, Pip, you're encouraging it. Don't say another word. But as Margret watched, the small moth fluttered lower down, settling in a sliver of moonlight near her face. She could see now that he had two glittering, unblinking eyes, a pair of waving feelers that were reaching out towards her, 3 pairs of legs and 2 beautiful, dusty gray wings. His head cocked on one side, and he seemed to be studying Margaret's features just as she was studying his. I'm Margret, said Margret, remembering her manners. Pipperflit, said the moth, with a flit of his wings. But you can call me Pip. You're not going to gobble me up, are you? No, of course not, said Margret. Good, said Pip. You know, I didn't think humans could hear us. I didn't think moths could talk, said Margret. Didn't you? How funny! The moth crawled along the branch until he was perched right in front of Margaret's nose. Where did you come from? He said. From the orphanage. Oh, said Pip. He was silent for a moment, then nodded quickly. Oh yes, the orphanage. I see. What's that? It's a place for orphans. Children with no parents. Pip looked at her in amazement. No parents? He cried. But where in the world did you come from? No, Margret said. We had parents once, just not anymore. Now we only have the switch. Oh yes, the switch. I understand, said Pip, nodding. Then, a few moments later, what's a switch? She's horrible, said Margret. Just then, 2 more moths came fluttering down from the upper branches of the tree. Now you've done it, one of them said, fluttering its wings and agitation. I can fucking read. Now that you've talked to it, it'll probably stay here forever. Don't be such a stink beetle, said Pip. I'm only being friendly. Anyway, it's called Margret. This is Rimblewisp, and that's Flitterwing, said Pip to Margret. Rimb and Flit for short. The 2 new moths landed on the branch, then tilted their heads to one side, just as Pip had done. What's it? Said Flit. Humph, said Rim. Why is it so big? Hello, said Margret, feeling rather silly. I won't stay forever, I promise. There, you see, said Pip. It's only visiting. Well, it still seems rather odd. Where did it come from? The orphanage, Pip said. Oh, said Rim. The moth named Flit nodded. Margret only smiled as she sat there in the tree, talking to the moths in the dark of the night. Margret Gay, god damn it, had become one of the few people in the world to ever discover the truth about moths. Chapter 16. The Truth About Moths. Waze, how you doing? While the sight of a butterfly sets people to skipping around with nets, the sight of a moth often inspires shrieks and fainting fits. Indeed, you may think that moths are nothing more than unfashionable butterflies, drab, ugly creatures to be ignored or run away from. But the truth is that moths are much more beautiful. But the truth about moths is much more wonderful. Yeah. I think Waze either fell asleep or is lost in doodling, but that's okay. I mean, it's gotta be at least midnight for them. Though I don't know exactly how our time zones compare, but I know for me it's 4:30 a.m. I've been streaming for 3.5 hours now. If you were to sit and watch a moth for a whole day, it might look as though it were doing nothing at all. But the night is a different matter entirely. Nighttime is when the moths come alive. As soon as the sun set and the moths emerge from their nooks and corners, they have only one purpose until the next day's sunrise: to have as much fun as they possibly can. They will play and fly and flutter in the moonlight until they are nearly breathless, stopping only for a sip of nectar or a drop of dew. Then they will loop and spin and whirl until they are ready to collapse with happiness. I'm gonna fix myself real quick. There we go. so you can't really blame them for being quite tired out by morning, content to rest up quietly until the next night's festivities. The other thing that moths are doing in the daytime is thinking up clever new games to impress their friends. Moths are very competitive, you see, and love nothing more than to show off. You may have seen them at a game called Light Hopping, which is one of the oldest and most popular moth games. Every time a moth spots a light or a lamp post, he will race to it as fast as possible. The last one to hop on the light is it, and that moth has to tag one of his friends, do 3 quick loop-de-loops and touch the light again before his friends can tag him back. This game is so popular that moths will even practice at it all alone, just to be ready for when the time comes for a real match. And it is so popular that even the rumors of great danger posed by mysterious lights known as candles cannot stop them from playing it. They have other games too. There is Hoverpick, in which moths fly in formation to make shapes that others will guess at, and Billabump, which is a flying form of leapfrog. In fact, Margret had interrupted a game of Billabump between Pip, Rim, and Flit, and that was taking place on the lawn. When the 3 moths had heard Margret's footsteps approaching, they'd abandoned their game and fled into the tree. There were few events that could cause a moth to abandon their game before it's finished. On rare occasions, a silently swooping owl or a sudden hailstorm might cause moths to recover inside their tree. On one infamous night, many years before, a barefoot dreg named Sally Winkleson had shuffled through the yard in her nightgown, fast asleep. She had walked straight through a game of hoverpick and stopped in her tracks, then turned around and marched back to the orphanage, pausing once to ask, which way to the cheese factory? But the appearance of Margret, wide awake and curious, was the first of its kind. These were some of the marvelous things she discovered listening to Pip, Rim, and Flit, as she took in the sights and sounds in the moth tree for the first time. "Game's afoot!" called a voice suddenly from outside. "Whirlawomps!" The wings of the 3 moths began to twitch. Then, without a word, they flew upward out of the branches and into the night. Margret scrambled after them, back through the makeshift tunnel and into the brush. And what she saw when she emerged made her gasp for the second time that night. More moths had come out of hiding. There were dozens, maybe hundreds of them, flitting through the air in chaotic loops and twirls. The sky was alive with moths at play. At first, she didn't see a pattern in it, but after she sat quietly for a few moments, she began to understand. Whirlawomps is a moth game played late into the spring, when the most impatient of moths have emerged from their cocoons, and the slow movers are still enjoying their time as caterpillars. To play, each moth pairs up with a caterpillar, who spins a small thread of silk. Together they fasten one end of thread around a small blueberry, which the moths call plurples. Once the plurple is fashioned, the moth carries the other end of the thread with its front legs and takes off into the air. And that is where the fun really starts. The girl of Whirlawomps is to swing your plurple so that it squishes into another moth, marking them with blue juice. As soon as that happens, the moth who's been squished on is out for the rest of the round, and the moth who's done the squishing zips off to look for the next target. Margret, sitting cross-legged at the foot of the brush, hardly knew where to look. Her eyes darted between loop-de-loops and swirling purples. Or plurples. I'm never going to get that word right. And zooming and zipping moths. She popped a handful of plurples into her mouth from time to time, and they tasted tangy and sweet. She sat there quietly in the grass for what seemed like no time at all, until she finally began to yawn. Only then did she notice the dawn creeping over the horizon. "Oh," she said, jumping to her feet. "I should go." "Why?" said Pip. "The game's not over." "I'm sorry, but I need to get back." "Back to the orphanage?" Pipped up Flit. "Yes," said Margret. "Back there." "See ya, what's it?" said Flit. "You'll come back tomorrow, won't you, Margret?" said Pip. Margret smiled. "I will," she said, and she ran back to the orphanage. And I think that might be a good place to end it for tonight, seeing as it is now almost 5 a.m. my time, and I do need to get some semblance of sleep. But I have placed a bookmark, and if you happen to be awake tomorrow, Poppy, I will not be able to read tomorrow unless it is in the morning. When I wake up. Depending on if I wake up in time. But maybe we could do a tad bit more reading then. All in all, it's a pretty short book. It's a very good one. I like it a lot. Thank you for joining and putting up with my nonsense. I appreciate you very much. What time is it for you right now, Poppy? About the same as me? Well, if I get up in time, then, and my usual wake up time is around 10:30 a.m. If I wake up then, I can start streaming again and finish up the book. And even if you can't make it, well, the VOD will be there. That's not really early. I mean, I work until midnight. I start at 4, get off work at midnight. Typically, I'll go to bed around 3 or 4, and then get up at 10, and then typically I stream in the morning because that's when most people are awake. So I'll stream from like 11:30 until 2:30 or so. And then I go back to work. Yeah, I work in a factory. But that's where I'm gonna end it for tonight, so I can get some sleep. I'm surprised you managed to stay awake. I'm pretty sure I put ways to sleep. It's perfectly fine by me. But I thank you for joining. I hope you have a good night. Get some rest, Poppy. Good night.